Chapter 604, The Battle Outside the City. Jian Chen had only laughed. Without fear for his own life, he charged straight for the elder as well. With a thrust of his right arm, the origin energy surging throughout it had arced straight outwards in a brilliant gleam of light straight for the elder's chest. From within his earthen armor, the elder had been startled by Jian Chen's course of action. He had no idea that Jian Chen would be that fast. Up until now, the few individuals of the Shi family had figured Jian Chen to be an Earth Saint Master. It had been outside of their expectations to see that within such a short amount of time, Jian Chen would have gone from a second cycle Earth Saint Master to become a Heaven Saint Master. The speed at which Jian Chen had struck out with his sword had been far faster than what an Earth Saint Master with a wind attribute would even be capable of. Shocked by this, the elders were now re-evaluating Jian Chen to be an even bigger threat. Despite the speed of his stab to be out of their expectations, the elder wearing the earthen armor had been equally fast in his reaction. In a flash, his giant sword had exploded forth with a yellow light that originated from his body. The light on the sword had grown even larger with the amount of energy being fed into it before it finally smashed against the origin energy Jian Chen wielded. Boom! With the collision between Jian Chen's origin energy and the elder's saint weapon, a tremendous amount of saint force had been expelled from the area and over the entire earth. With dust pervading the air from the blast, the area between Jian Chen and the elder had been completely blocked by the dust and had made visibility almost impossible. The other four elders from the Shi family had used a thin layering of saint force protecting them from the incoming dust and had stared intently through it with stunned expressions. Third elder, is Jian Chen truly a second cycle Earth Saint Master? One elder asked in disbelief. The third elder gave a small hum as he tried to think. 1 year ago when I fought him, he was only an Earth Saint Master. But with just barely a year after that, his strength has basically toppled the heavens to make a tremendous change. What's startling is the fact that he isn't a cripple even after his saint weapon was destroyed. His strength should be extremely low and not what it is now. Every man is destined for fortune after surviving a great disaster. I suppose that saying is true because of cases like these. Another elder sighed. Within this moment, a single person came flying straight out from the dust and out towards the third elder. The elder had narrowed his eyes for a moment before letting out a grim sound of laughter, unharmed. It seems Elder Ma hadn't left even a single scratch on you. Jian Chen, you really did grow even stronger than before. Surrounding his body with the wind element, the elder shot up 50 meters into the sky without a second to spare. Jian Chen's figure had flown straight up into the sky as well. Aided with the wind element from the world, Jian Chen had chased after the third elder without reprieve. What? He's a Heaven Saint Master too? The other 3 elders had been astonished. Not a single one of them had expected or thought to see that someone that was only a second cycle Earth Saint Master would become a Heaven Saint Master that was capable of such a speed that could leave the 3 Heaven Saint Masters tongue-tied in a single year. Seeing Jian Chen fly through the air had caused no small amount of shock to the third elder as well. Stupefied, the elder couldn't help but remark, but how? Just a year ago, you were merely just an Earth Saint Master before you had your saint weapon destroyed. How did you become a Heaven Saint Master instead of becoming a cripple? The third elder was no longer as calm as before. His face was filled with abject disbelief and even in his heart, waves of shock had surged everywhere with great power. Unable to stop himself from sneering after seeing the look on the elder's face, Jian Chen laughed. Third elder, I should really pay you back for that debt from 1 year ago. Don't even think that you'll leave here alive today. With the final word spoken, Jian Chen had already closed in onto the third elder and brought his origin energy sword straight at the throat of the other man. The third elder was already aware of just how devastating the origin energy was and knew better than to cross swords with it. Borrowing the speed boost his wind affinity gave him, the third elder tried his best to gain some distance away from him. Then, with his saint force pulsating into his sword, the elder shouted out loud, Earth Tier Battle Skill Cloud Piercer. The wind attribute saint force that had been around the third elder had immediately condensed into a thicker wave of energy that helped propel his body towards Jian Chen with the speed of an arrow shot out from a bow in an attempt to spear him straight through. Jian Shen had laughed coldly once more when he saw the third elder decide to approach him instead of retreating. With the origin energy, Jian Shen moved to stab the elder when all of a sudden, something behind him had prompted him to turn around and stab at the empty space behind him. Ding! A crisp sound could be heard as from what was once an empty space in the air had now a single figure levitating over it. It was the third elder. The third elder that had been approaching him from the other side had been nothing more than a mirror image that disappeared as soon as Jian Shen looked at it. What a strange battle skill! Jian Shen praised with some astonishment. The cloud piercer that the third elder had used was nothing more than a diversion. The first body had been a mirror image that would move as he pleased, while his actual body used some sort of strange method to hide himself. It had been a silent and strategic course of action that allowed the elder to traverse to behind Jian Shen to attempt at a fatal strike. If not for the presence that Jian Shen had spread out, then the third elder would have most likely delivered a fatal blow onto him. Pfft! A mouthful of blood escaped from the third elder's lips as his face paled due to the blood loss. Glancing at his saint weapon, there was now a new jagged chip to its edge. Elder Hunyuan. Elder Hunyuan is dead. Third elder, Jian Shen has killed Elder Hunyuan. From down below where the dust was finally beginning to recede, the first Heaven Saint Master that had fought with Jian Shen could be seen on the ground. From between his eyebrows, a single hole could be seen leaking blood from the spot. What? Elder Hunyuan is dead? The third elder cried out. Turning to look down, his body grew rigid with shock when he saw the sight for himself. Taking advantage of the elder's period of shock, Jian Shen charged forward with the origin energy to pierce through the elder's eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the two had closed to less than a meter. Letting out a startled yelp, the elder swung his head as if his life was hanging by a thread. Despite just barely dodging the strike by a hair's breadth, there had been a single gash on his forehead. Whoosh! The second delivery of Jian Shen's sword had been just as fast as the first and followed the elder's movements without leaving him time to even breathe. The elder had been dreadfully terrified of the origin energy and wanted nothing more than to distance himself away from it. With no other choice but to rely on his own speed, he retreated backwards to widen the distance. Unfortunately for him, Jian Shen had harbored no desire to allow him such a course of action. Encasing himself within the wind from the world, he dashed towards the third elder in order to pressure him into a situation where he couldn't even retaliate. Assist the third elder. The other three elders had snapped out from their shock and immediately shot into the skies to help the elder. Don't bother helping me, just use your heaven-tier battle skills. Only those could hurt this bastard. Who would have known that a single year was enough to cause such a drastic change in his power? The elder cried out in anger. His heart had been thrown into disarray with today's events. This was a first in his 300 years of living. A single youth not even 50 years old was giving him a thrashing that had not only affected his physical self, but his pride. Without delay, the three Heaven Saint Masters immediately split off into three separate corners and began to charge up their heaven-tier battle skills. The usage of a heaven-tier battle skill by three Heaven Saint Masters was more than enough to cause a tremendous influx of energy to surge around the area. The clouds in the skies above had already started to swirl around the area, and the dirt on the ground was being thrown about due to the fierce wind blowing around. As if an angry dragon was about to awaken, the power that was beginning to unfold here had started to spread out to such distance that even the inhabitants of Mercenary City could feel the change in weather. This is a heaven-tier battle skill. Only those can cause such a tremendous amount of pressure. A Heaven Saint Master must be doing battle somewhere. There's people outside the city fighting. Looks like they're about to use a heaven-tier battle skill. 2 or 3 of them, I'd wager. That's something that's extremely hard to come by. Let's go watch. Mercenary City had instantly gone into a clamor, with many of the people running out of the city to look where the battle was taking place from a distance. From within an inn, Hu Xiaotian had been sitting by himself as he enjoyed a cup of fine liquor and a platter of cooked meat. When he sensed the influx of pressure caused by the heaven-tier battle skill, his eyebrows narrowed together as he thought to himself, there was a Heaven Saint Master following Jian Shen yesterday. And today Jian Shen had only just left the inn. Could he be the one fighting? Jian Chen participated in the gathering of the mercenaries as an Earth Saint Master, but that was barely 4 years ago. Did he perhaps become a Heaven Saint Master within those 4 years? No, that shouldn't be possible, but only a Heaven Saint Master should be possible of using Heaven tier battle skill like this. It has to be someone else that's fighting. I should take a look for myself. Scattering several golden coins onto the table, Hu Xiaotian left the inn as well. From the skies above Mercenary City, the sound of a young woman could suddenly be heard. Big brother? That's Big brother. He's fighting someone. There has to be trouble then. Should Little Spirit help Big brother then? But. Master told Little Spirit to not interfere in things like this. If Little Spirit interferes, wouldn't Master scold Little Spirit when Master gets back? But Big brother has the scent of Master on him. Could Little Spirit really watch Big brother get hurt without doing anything? What to do? How is Big brother doing? Should Little Spirit save Big brother? Little Spirit's voice grew even more frantic by the second, as if she was unsure of what decision to make. Chapter 605. Enduring 4 Heaven tier battle skills. The sounds that were coming from above the skies of Mercenary City had gone completely unnoticed by the inhabitants of the city down below. With so many people riding on top of a magical beast mount to rush towards the scene of the battle, each one of them were in a hurry to watch the battle where even a Heaven tier battle skill was being used. The weather of the area was growing even more turbulent by the second due to the amount of pressure being created by the Heaven tier battle skills. The air in the area felt as if it had solidified. Even Jian Chen felt his body grow sluggish because of the 3 battle skills being used, giving the third elder ample time to escape. The elder had let out a sigh in relief. Because of the injuries he sustained while evading Jian Chen, along with the constant paranoia of being hit by the origin energy, he had felt like his arms and feet had been shackled. His true strength couldn't be used and had made him feel rather sullen. Jian Chen. Let's see you try to be arrogant this time. Heaven tier battle skill. Heaven's execution blade. The third elder bellowed before unleashing his battle skill with a vow to injure Jian Chen and vent out his earlier frustrations. Deadlocked by 4 different Heaven tier battle skills, Jian Chen felt as if he was carrying a gigantic mountain on his back. Movement was extremely difficult for him in this very moment and did not allow for him to dodge them. Rah! Suddenly, Jian Chen let loose a tremendous roar to the heavens that reverberated throughout the entire area. At the same time, 2 fierce glows of azure and violet began to blare up in Jian Chen's eyes as if 2 demonic will-o-wisps were dancing in them. With the squall that was going on, sand and dirt was being kicked around the entire area, with pieces of stone and grass to be seen scattered about. In a flash, it had all converged around Jian Chen's position. Just 2.5 kilometers away, a strange but attractive force of energy was somehow pulling at the trees in a forest before they too flew towards Jian Chen while basked in an azure and violet light. In no time at all, Jian Chen's entire body had been covered by a dense amount of stones and tree. Under his control, 4 separate but gigantic blades made from these fragments were formed within an instant. Each blade had a faint azure and violet glow to it as it levitated around him. In the same time that Jian Chen had finished his movements, the 4 elders had also finished charging up their Heaven tier battle skills. With 3 of the saint weapons shining furiously with an eye-piercing light, the amount of energy flickering off their blades had already started to distort the space around them. Commanding the swords with his mind, he had 3 of them shoot off towards the 3 elders coming at him so as to abate the strength of the Heaven tier battle skill. Boom! The 3 swords collided with the Heaven tier battle skills while in midair, causing an explosion to occur. The blast had caused the ears of everyone nearby to twinge in pain while the shockwave continued to flow off into every direction. Even the clouds up above had been scattered apart while the remaining dregs of energy slammed into the ground and left a crater nearly a meter deep. The 3 swords of Jian Chen had been like tofu in the face of the battle skills. Upon collision, they had been shattered apart while the Heaven tier battle skills themselves had remained standing. Continuing onwards to Jian Chen with a slightly slower speed than before, it could be seen that the power had been weakened in comparison. A wave of earth had converged around Jian Chen's body before forming an incomparably strong-looking piece of armor. With the azure and violet origin energy swirling around him, the originally 2-finger-breadth wide piece of energy had transformed into a sword about the wide of an entire palm and 10 meters long in length. The iridescent light radiating off of the sword had dyed the area around it a vibrant color as well. In this moment, Jian Chen had brought his usage with the azure and violet origin energy to its limits before shooting off 3 separate rays of sword chi to clash with the remaining battle skills. The clash between the two had caused yet another explosion, with the sword chi being blown apart while the 3 heaven-tier battle skills weakened once more. With this one additional step, Jian Chen had all about run out of enough time to do anything else. The very last thing to do was to allow the 3 battle skills to hit him. Boom! Following the third explosion, Jian Chen's body had been sent flying away. Even though the 3 heaven-tier battle skills had been weakened by several levels, its remaining power was still not to be trifled with. Even the armor he wore had been shattered into pieces from the blow. PFTT. A mouthful of dark red blood came escaping out from Jian Chen's mouth. His face had already paled by several degrees. If it were against one heaven-tier battle skill, Jian Chen could probably escape from one without much harm, if any. But against the simultaneous blows of 3 of them, there was no way he'd be able to do that. Jian Chen's body had been catapulted away from the impact of the battle skill, but before his body had even stabilized itself in the air, another wave of pressure had already locked onto his body as the third elder brought both hands over his head. In his hands, a single giant sword about 100 meters in length had materialized with a resplendent beam of light escaping from the blade. Heaven's executing blade. The elder bellowed before swinging his hands down. With that, the 100-meter-long blade came down like lightning onto Jian Chen's head. From where the blade traveled, the space had shuddered slightly as if it was on the verge of being torn apart. Without any time to even wipe the blood away from his mouth, Jian Chen had commanded the origin energy to shoot forth from his hands with the utmost seriousness. Along with the 10-meter-long blade, the remaining last sword made from stone and tree had shot forth as well to smash against the third elder's heaven-tier battle skill. Boom! The fierce explosion had rocked the entire area, with the explosion sounding more like a crack of thunder impacting against the earth. Everyone had gone deaf for that one moment as the earth beneath them trembled incessantly. Several places on the ground had already started to fracture in a series of spiderweb-like cracks into the surrounding area. The last remaining sword had exploded into a mighty show with barely any tree bark to be seen anymore. It was as if the heaven's executing blade had utterly decimated the tree bark out of existence while the blade itself continued onwards to Jian Chen. It had been with a grim face that Jian Chen stared at the battle skill. The third elder's usage of the heaven's execution blade had been several times stronger than when the other 3 heaven saint masters had used it. This was a fact that caused Jian Chen to feel even more somber than before. Up against such a powerful battle skill, his movements were limited once more and meant that there was no room nor time to dodge. His only remaining option was to endure this 4th battle skill. A crazed glare crept into Jian Chen's eyes as he exhausted the very last vestige of his energy into using the origin energy to defend against the mighty heaven's execution blade, while reapplying another layer of his earthen armor onto his body. Although it was powerless to defend him from the heaven skill battle skill, it would still bolster his defenses by a small portion, allowing him to resist even more. The heaven's execution blade had been extremely fast in its travels, and before Jian Chen could get any more than 3 bursts of sword chi out, it had collided onto his body and instantaneously shattered the armor he had been wearing. Suffering yet another heavy wound, Jian Chen's body had been like a bullet as he was blown away. With blood pervading into the air like a bloody mist from his mouth, his chest had been a mangled mess as well. Defending against 4 heaven-tier battle skills was more than what he could take at a comfortable level. He had flown for another 300 meters before finally coming to a rest far away. His face was as white as sheet due to blood loss, but while he was injured, he was not so powerless as to stop himself from falling onto the ground and had somehow managed to stay afloat in the air. Jian Chen, you're as good as captured. Hand over what we want or we won't even let you die with your body intact. The third elder gasped out. The Heaven Tier battle skill had taken a lot of energy from him, and the Heaven's execution blade itself had taken more than half of his saint force. The other 3 elders had convened around the third elder with gasping breaths as well. Each one of them stared at Jian Chen as if they were looking at some sort of monstrous person. Not once did they ever imagine that Jian Chen would be able to handle 4 Heaven Tier battle skills at once while still being able to stay afloat in the sky. This result wasn't within their expectations. What an unordinary brat he is. I had thought that after sustaining 4 Heaven Tier battle skills, he would be crippled, if not dead. But even now, he's still alive with manageable wounds. How inconceivable. One of the elders spoke with astonishment. He's deserving to be the king of mercenaries. I see if he can handle even that. The elder to his right sighed in admiration as well. Staring deeply at Jian Chen, the third elder spoke. The power he wields in his hand is extremely strong. With just him alone, the 4 Heaven Tier battle skills we used was weakened by him several times over. By the time it hit him, the power wasn't even at half of what it started out to be. Otherwise, there'd be no way he'd handle all that without damage. I wonder just what freakish power it is that he uses. The elder whispered with a small tint of envy in his voice. That's simple. Wait for when we capture him, we'll know all about this strange energy then. The third elder laughed before looking back to Jian Chen. Well, do you still think you can face off against us? Remaining silent from his spot in midair, Jian Chen tilted his head to look down at his mangled chest. He knew that if not for the fact that he had tempered his body with chaotic force to make it even stronger than before, then the third elder's battle skill would have most likely blown a hole straight through his chest. And if that were to happen, then it would be impossible for Jian Chen to survive for the remainder of the battle. With such a grievous wound, then any other Heaven Saint Master would have most likely lose their ability to fight. But even now, he had still a considerable amount of fighting strength. The plethora of strength granted to his body had allowed him to take on this wound with enough energy to spare. Glaring at the 4 elders in front of him, Jian Chen's body slowly began to seep with energy as if raring to fight. The origin energy in his right hand grew brighter and brighter, allowing the beams of light to take on a more definitive type of form of energy. A year ago, Jian Chen had been powerless against the third elder's Heaven Tier battle skill. But today, he was completely capable of withstanding 4 of them. Sensing the intent to battle from Jian Chen, the third elder's expression had turned slightly stunned to see that Jian Chen was still willing to fight. Jian Chen had been able to take on 4 Heaven Tier battle skills and still have energy. This type of capability was something that even a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master was unable of pulling off. After all, this could kill any Heaven Saint Master. Chapter 606, Imprint of Death, 1. By now, a large group of people had already gathered from Mercenary City. From far away, they watched the battle take place between Heaven Saint Masters. Several of the other Heaven Saint Masters had already flown up into the air to watch it from another perspective. Hu Xiaotian had been with the Heaven Saint Masters. Although they were all standing far away, their eyesight was strong enough to allow them to watch the battle with clarity. When he saw Jian Chen floating in the air, Hu Xiaotian had been surprised. Isn't that brother Jian Chen? So he really did become a Heaven Saint Master. I underestimated him. But isn't he amazing? He's fighting against 4 other Heaven Saint Masters and managed to withstand 4 Heaven Tier battle skills. Perhaps brother Jian Chen has become a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master? Look! The one fighting those 4 Heaven Saint Masters, isn't that the one who took first place in the gathering of mercenaries, Jian Chen? Several figures had realized Jian Chen's identity had cried out in shock. It really is Jian Chen. But wasn't he an Earth Saint Master when he was in the gathering of the mercenaries? So why is he a Heaven Saint Master now after a single year? Is that really him? Heavens, he's already a Heaven Saint Master. What's more, he's able to fight against 4 other Heaven Saint Masters using their Heaven Tier battle skills. How inconceivable. Jian Chen was in the gathering of the mercenaries, so he can't be over the age of 50. What? 50? Have you seen how old he looks? According to what I know, Jian Chen's true age can't be over the age of 30. You're kidding. His age isn't even past the 30s? Good heavens, becoming a Heaven Saint Master at that age is really unbelievable. Those 4 Heaven Saint Masters used their Heaven tier battle skills just now, but Jian Chen managed to defend himself from them. That's really something else. I'd have to guess he's a 4th cycle Heaven Saint Master at the very least. Why just a 4th cycle? Even a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master would be hard-pressed to survive 4 Heaven tier battle skills. I say that Jian Chen has to be a Saint Ruler. Another elder announced. His expression had been complex as he thought about just how Jian Chen had managed to defend against 4 Heaven tier battle skill. A feat like that was bordering on the unbelievable. What? Saint Ruler. How could that be? Jian Chen's identity had been quickly revealed to everyone there. But his revealment as a Heaven Saint Master had been especially shocking. Anyone that looked at him had now a new look of shock as they discussed to one another. When someone had suggested that Jian Chen had already become a Saint Ruler, the entire area had gone deathly silent. Not a single one of them had spoke since news like that was far too incredulous to even imagine. Jian Chen becoming a Saint Ruler before he even reaches his 30s would be far too terrifying. With the entire continent as a scale, talent like that would be hard to come by every millennia. After a very long time, another elder spoke with a sigh. Jian Chen entered the holy lands of Mercenary City. With his talent already, it would only be a matter of time before he becomes a Saint Ruler. A frail-looking elder exhaled slowly. On another side, 3 black-robed men stood together as they watched the scene with calm expressions. One of the 3 had a single fan in his hands as he muttered, a Heaven Saint Master before the age of 30 and can withstand 4 Heaven tier battle skills. That Jian Chen really is something special. His potential for the future is practically unlimited. If we rope him into our clan before he becomes a Saint Ruler, it'd be a great boon for us. Elder Zhou, go and make the inquiries on Jian Chen's background later. See just what type of person he is and where he's from. The middle-aged man standing behind the fan holder had nodded without hesitation. It'll be difficult, but I will try my best. With his strength revealed, Jian Chen's overwhelming talent had caught the attention of the more influential households. It went without exception that every person was determined to be in his good graces no matter what. If they couldn't, then at the very least they wouldn't be enemies with him. Everyone knew that to offend Jian Chen was tantamount to offending a figure that was close to becoming a Saint Ruler. This person had a very good chance of becoming a Saint King in the future too. Meanwhile, in the skies, Jian Chen was injured, but he was still as imposing as ever. Just like a sword being unsheathed, the power emanating from him was filled with the intent to make battle. The elders of the Shi family had all thought about the result of making an enemy with Jian Chen, but there had already been an unwashable blood debt between the two. The differences between them couldn't be solved amicably, so the only way now was to take advantage of the time before Jian Chen would become an actual threat to the Shi family and kill him first. Like killing the baby in the cradle, they would have to act now or be forced to witness a disaster to their family when it was too late. Everyone together now. We must make sure to capture Jian Chen today. If we cannot, then we must make sure he dies here instead. We cannot let him escape again this time. The 3rd elder shouted. Without giving Jian Chen any more time to rest, he and the other 3 charged straight at him. Jian Chen was not afraid, even with the situation. Instead of retreating, he dashed forward with the origin energy ready to fight once more. Brother Jian Chen, I'm here to lend you a hand. Just at that moment, a loud voice exploded forth from the direction of Mercenary City. Seconds after, Wuxia Tian could be seen flying towards him. Jian Chen, we are here to help you as well. Not even moments after Wuxia Tian had spoke, the 3 black-robed men from earlier had flown through the air after him to help Jian Chen as well. The 3 of them wished to be in Jian Chen's good graces, so helping him out in this moment was an extremely rare opportunity that had to be taken advantage of. You have us as well. Several more voices cried out from the crowd as another 4 Heaven Saint Masters shot forth. Each one bore an intent that was more than willing to fight with the 4 elders of the Shi family. They were all borrowing this opportunity to help create a bridge between them and Jian Chen to gain even more power. After all, helping someone in their time of need was the best way to start a friendship. Within several seconds, 8 different Heaven Saint Masters were flying through the skies to help Jian Chen fight off the 4 elders from the Shi family. This sudden aberration had caused the 4 elders to grow extremely grim. They had never thought that such an event like this would happen. I appreciate everyone's willingness to lend me a hand, but I alone will be enough to deal with these 4. Everyone, please just stay by the side and continue watching. Today, I will slaughter these 4 myself. Jian Chen spoke to the 8. Only the 4 heaven-tier battle skills frightened him, but without that, then Jian Chen wouldn't fear these 4 at all. With his origin energy helping him, he had nothing else to worry about. He wasn't willing to be in debt to another person as well, since he knew that their intentions wouldn't all be as pure as snow. The best option was to just refuse their kindness all in all. Even as he spoke, Jian Chen was already closing in with the 4 elders and were just several hundred meters away from clashing. When those 8 Heaven Saint Masters heard Jian Chen, they could only just stop their mid-flight. They too wished to see the true strength of someone who had managed to withstand 4 heaven-tier battle skills. Furthermore, they wanted to see just how an injured person like him could kill 4 Heaven Saint Masters. If Brother Jian Chen wishes to kill those 4 himself, then I won't stop him in doing so. Hu Xiaotian smiled from his spot. Then if Brother Jian Chen needs our help, you all just need to ask and the 3 of us will do our best to help out. The fan-holding middle-aged man in black robes smiled as well. He had not cared at all for whom the 4 elders Jian Chen was fighting. If Sire Jian Chen wishes to kill those 4 personally, then we won't interfere with him. But Sire Jian Chen, if you truly do need our help, just mention it. The other Heaven Saint Masters repeated one after another politely. If these men dared to stand against the Shi family, that meant that their own statuses were perhaps quite considerable as well. Chapter 607, Imprint of Death, 2. Without another word to be said, Jian Chen began to do his best to fight the 4 elders. Wielding the origin energy, he chased down the 4 to stab at them with it. The unbelievable speed in which he swung his weapon had been fast enough for several mirror images to be seen. Stroke by stroke, the origin energy struck out accurately and swiftly. In the art of the sword, fast, accurate, and unrelenting were the 3 aspects to master to have a successful mastery over it. While the 4 elders had the advantage in numbers, they were all deeply afraid of the power of the origin energy and were thus limited in their ability to fight. Since they were handicapped as such, the result was that they were being completely overwhelmed by Jian Chen and had felt sullen about it. Jian Chen had his presence to help him serve as a radar in every direction possible. No matter where they tried to turn about around Jian Chen, it was completely without success. Each and every time, Jian Chen would manage to evade their strikes or sometimes swing his origin energy at their saint weapon instead. As a result, they would have to dodge as well. This bastard is clearly injured, so why can he still fight like this? After several dozen exchanges, one elder had let out an angry curse as he dodged Jian Chen's strike. We can't go on like this. The 4 of us will have to use a heaven-tier battle skill together now. Another elder spoke. With one arm tied behind their backs, they could only resort to this. But the 3rd elder had refused. No, a heaven-tier battle skill is far too tiring to use at this moment. A single use of one is enough to take out 50 or 60% of our saint force. If we use it a second time, that'd use up the rest of it, so we'd be powerless to fight. That serves us no use. The 3rd elder had been loath to admit it, but if he had known that Jian Chen was this strong, then he would have notified the family to dispatch some people. And if he had sent a message to the Jita clan, then the 2 households could fight Jian Chen together. There would have been no need for his own household to fall into such disrepair and lose a member. Ah! Suddenly, a cry could be heard from one of the elders. The reason for this outcry was due to the fact that Jian Chen had speared his chest through with the origin energy. Elder Mark. The third elder and the other two had let out a startled cry before they launched an earth-tier battle skill at Jian Chen in order to save the elder. But Jian Chen's mobility had been even faster than they thought. Just before they could unleash their earth-tier battle skill, Jian Chen had already stabbed his origin energy into the forehead of the elder and extinguished his soul. Elder Mark. The three cried out in misery. It had been a very painful experience for them to witness the death of Elder Mark in front of them. Jian Chen hadn't bothered to stop after killing Elder Mark. His right hand lashed out with 3 separate rays of sword chi to strike at the 3 dazed elders. The death of Elder Mark had weighed heavily on the remaining 3 elders. Only the third elder had been able to regain his wits in time to dodge the sword chi. The other 2 had been too late to react, resulting in the sword chi to pierce straight into their chests. Knowing that this was a chance to kill the other 2, Jian Chen immediately rushed forward with the origin energy flashing in his hand. Swiftly, Jian Chen moved to slice down their necks. PFT. 2 jettisons of blood could be seen as the decapitated heads of the 2 elders fly through the air. Since their lives had not yet completely ended, looks of complete terror could be seen in their eyes. With a flick of his finger, 2 bursts of sword chi erupted from his hands and stabbed a hole straight through the middle of their foreheads, extinguishing their soul. In an instant, 3 Heaven Saint Masters had been killed from the 4. Only the third elder was left. At this sight, the third elder had lost all color in his face as well as all his fighting spirit. Turning around, he began to run away. With the 4 of them, they were already no match for Jian Chen, so with just him now, it would only be a matter of time before he too would die. The Jian Chen of today was already vastly different to the Jian Chen a year ago. He was no longer the same Jian Chen that he could chase down to the ends of the earth with. Don't even think about running. Jian Chen laughed. With the wind element wrapping around his body, Jian Chen flew off into the direction the third elder had been flying to. This speed of his was even faster than the third elder, and halfway through his flight, Jian Chen had unleashed a burst of sword chi to chase after the third elder. Whoosh! The sound of the sword chi flying through the air could be heard before stabbing straight through the third elder's chest with lightning-quick speed. A mouthful of blood escaped from the third elder's mouth, causing his face to pale even further. His figure shook slightly as it floated in the sky as if he was on the verge of losing control. But then, it was with a timely manner that he managed to slow his descent and regain his flight. Seeing that escape was impossible, the third elder had given up on the notion. A resolute look appeared on his face as he turned to stare down Jian Chen. Jian Chen. Even if I die, I won't let you live in peace after. My sure family will never renounce our anger towards you, and you won't live to see yourself outlive it imprint of death. The third elder howled. In the next moment, a faint red mist began to arise from his body while his body itself began to dry up. Within seconds, it looked as if his body had lost all of the moisture within the body, leaving him as a dried-up husk of a skeleton. This red mist had gathered above the third elder's body before forming a grotesque bloody pattern. And in the next second, it flew towards Jian Chen with unbelievable speed. Jian Chen hadn't enough time to dodge the bloody pattern due to the unbelievable speed of it. It was almost as if it was made of lightning with how fast it had been going. In no time at all, it had embedded itself into Jian Chen's body and then out of sight. Seeing that the blood pattern had laid true to Jian Chen's body, the third elder's eyes slowly closed as he fell down to the ground. His body resembled a mummy that had been deprived of moisture for an extremely long time. Paling with fright, Jian Chen hadn't even bothered to look at how the third elder had been doing as he hastily checked his own body. From where the blood pattern had touched him, there had been some sort of seal on his body that looked as if he had been branded. Grim, Jian Chen thought back to what the third elder said before he died. Imprint of death, he muttered, what kind of black magic is this? The imprint of death is something that makes use of the 3 vital energies of the human body to leave an unwashable mark on their enemy for easy tracking. As soon as Jian Chen had finished speaking, Wu Xiaotian's voice could be heard as he flew on over. Staring at Jian Chen with a complicated expression, Hu Xiaotian's mind had been far more chaotic than what his expression showed. The fact that Jian Chen had killed 4 Heaven Saint Masters was something that he still found hard to believe. Arriving by Jian Chen's side, Hu Xiaotian let out a long sigh as if trying to calm himself. Giving himself some time to think first, Hu Xiaotian said, "There is a huge cost for using the imprint of death. It is only when all hope is lost, and death is inevitable that one will use this technique. But once it is used, then the caster will have all of their energy sucked away and their spirit vanquished. All of the lifeblood in the body will evaporate, and the body will wither away just like that man just now. But the one marked with the imprint of death, wherever he might go, will be easily tracked by it. No matter how far he runs, he will be unable to evade detection." Still staring at Jian Chen, Hu Xiaotian spoke, "Brother Jian Chen, you must pay attention to this next part. The people behind this elder will definitely use the imprint of death to find you. No matter how far you go, you cannot escape from them. If you can't handle this future, then you should hide in Mercenary City." Jian Chen had felt his mind cloud over with those words. According to what Hu Xiaotian was saying, then the saint ruler of the Shi family would be able to find him with ease. There was no use in running to throw him off. Chapter 608, Arrival of 2 Saint Rulers. 1. Seeing the miserable expression on Jian Chen's face, Hu Xiaotian could infer that there was most likely no one supporting Jian Chen from behind that could handle the power behind the 3rd elder. As if to console him, he spoke, "Brother Jian Chen, don't fret too much. Mercenary City is considered the safest spot on the continent. If you can't deal with those people, then stay within the city. I'm sure these people here will be more than willing to help you out as well." Hu Xiaotian pointed to the Heaven Saint Masters that had been willing to help Jian Chen fight off the 4 Heaven Saint Masters a few moments ago. "Ha ha ha, Jian Chen, you are truly powerful beyond imagination. I hadn't expected to see you kill those 4 with nearly a single strike. I can say now that my eyes are fully open to the world now." The man in black robe spoke. Holding his fan, the man laughed out loud as he spoke. But his words had been indeed spoken from the heart. They were all truly stunned by just how strong Jian Chen was. "Sire Jian Chen, the imprint of death on you is something that the men behind the 3rd elder could use to find your position rapidly. If Sire Jian Chen can't fight them off, then my Vulcan Shrine would be more than happy to help you. Don't worry about the Shi family, our Vulcan Shrine have no fear for them." A red-robed elder smiled amicably to try and gain Jian Chen's favor. "You have my Daong clan. If Sire Jian Chen requires it, then my clan would be more than happy to help you deal with the Shi family." The black-robed man had been unwilling to give up their chance to earn Jian Chen's favor as well. Wiping away the blood from the corners of his mouth, Jian Chen cupped his hands to everyone. "I am thankful for everyone's willingness to assist me, but I will deal with this matter myself. I won't be imposing my troubles on you all." There was no such thing as a free meal in this world, and Jian Chen knew just what had prompted these people to be willing to help him. He would not let himself owe another a favor so easily. "Well then, there isn't much use in chatting for now. Brother Jian Chen is injured something fierce. We should treat his wounds back in Mercenary City first." Hu Xiaotian spoke up. Taking a pure white pill out from his space ring, he handed it over to Jian Chen. "Brother Jian Chen, this is a Class 6 Radiant Spirit pill. It won't be enough to heal your wounds, but it should speed it up a bit. Take a bite." Looking at the thumb-sized pill in Hu Xiaotian's hand, Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before finally taking it from him. With a word of thanks, he swallowed the pill. Jian Chen had a rather favorable impression of Hu Xiaotian and wouldn't refuse the pill offered to him. That would be impolite to Hu Xiaotian. After taking the pill, Jian Chen had felt his wounds healing faster than before. Even his pale face was beginning to regain some of its red flush from before. Afterwards, before the other people around Jian Chen left, Jian Chen was able to take the space rings from the corpses of the elders he had just killed. Together, they returned to Mercenary City, leaving behind a stunned audience still standing far off to the side to stare at the wreckage of the battle. This time, Jian Chen's true strength had astounded every single person in attendance. It had been far beyond their imagination even. Soon, his name would spread rapidly throughout the entire continent with tremendous speed. A man who had reached the Heaven Saint Master realm before the age of 30. Furthermore, this same person was able to survive against not one heaven-tier battle skill, but 4. Even combined, those elders had been no match for Jian Chen. This was a gargantuous piece of information that would spread across the continent with great fervor. Big brother, you're hurt. Are you okay? The very moment Jian Chen stepped across the barrier of Mercenary City, the clear sounds of a young woman could be heard echoing in his ear. Jian Chen's figure shook slightly as he looked around the place. But Little Spirit couldn't be seen. Big brother, Little Spirit is right here. Following the voice, the young figure of a woman suddenly materialized in front of Jian Chen. It was the very same Little Spirit that had appeared in his room the night before. But this time, her body was slightly transparent. One would be able to see straight through her body. Big brother, it's good that you were able to beat those idiots. Otherwise, Little Spirit would have gone against Master's orders to not interfere with the world. Big brother, does your wounds hurt? Little Spirit asked in concern from her perch a meter high in the sky. There had been a pained look on her face, as if she was looking at a hurt family member of hers. The fact that this Little Spirit, a being that had only just been crying over the loss of her long-lost master yesterday, was so pained at his current situation, Jian Chen couldn't help but feel slightly emotional as well. He had taken a liking to Little Spirit, and his feelings of her felt like a fellow orphan that was all alone in the world. Stopping in his footsteps, Jian Chen smiled towards Little Spirit, I'm fine. It was only a relatively minor injury, it won't take long before I heal up completely. Yeah. Big brother, you have to make sure to heal up. Little Spirit feels really bad to see you like this. She spoke in concern. Seeing the expression on her face, Jian Chen couldn't help but smile inwardly to himself. Hey, brother Jian Chen, who are you talking to? Talking to yourself like that, are you sure you're fine? Hu Xiaotian spoke from besides Jian Chen. He had been waving his palm in front of Jian Chen's face with an odd look. Jian Chen had stared blankly back at him as he turned away from Little Spirit. Looking at Hu Xiaotian and the other men, he could see that each one of them were looking at him rather strangely. I was talking with Little Spirit, can you not see her? Jian Chen asked curiously. Looking around the area, Hu Xiaotian answered, Brother Jian Chen, have you gone blind perhaps? There's no such Little Spirit anywhere. I can only see you standing off to yourself and speaking to no one but yourself. No matter where I look, I can't see anyone else. Big brother, Little Spirit doesn't wish to let them see Little Spirit, only you can. Little Spirit had spoken in the midst of his confusion. Hearing her explanation, Jian Chen had realized what was happening and smiled towards everyone. Continuing to walk with everyone else, Jian Chen smiled awkwardly while trying his best to not talk to himself any longer. Looking for an inn to rest up in for the night, Jian Chen holed himself up for the night while Hu Xiaotian and the other two groups returned to their own rooms. Shutting the door to his room, Jian Chen tore off the clothes he had been wearing with a pained grunt. Using a clean towel to wipe off the dried-up blood on his chest, the wounds on his chest could now be clearly seen. In some parts of his chest, parts of his bones could be seen almost. How fortunate that my body was tempered by the chaotic force to become far stronger than before. If not, then I would have most likely not the strength to stand out anymore after that. Jian Chen muttered. Placing down the tiger cub, he allowed for it to continue sleeping in peace on the bed. Since the cub was sleeping off the heavenly resources it ate, the cub was completely unaware of the outside world. So when Jian Chen had been fighting those 4 elders, it hadn't been shaken awake and continued to sleep. Jian Chen himself had no solution on how to change that either. Doing a simple treatment of his wounds, Jian Chen took out 2 radiant spirit pills from his space ring and swallowed it down. There were plenty of experts and major families within Mercenary City, so he didn't dare use his radiant saint force to heal himself. Furthermore, he was resolved that until he was a saint ruler, Jian wouldn't disclose the fact that he was a radiant saint master. Just as Jian closed his eyes to focus on healing, Little Spirit suddenly materialized within the middle of the room. When she saw the horrifying wound on Jian's chest, Little Spirit had a pained look in her eyes. Reaching out with a finger, a small burst of energy emanated from her before entering into Jian's body. Following the energy entering Jian's body, the wounds began to heal at an extremely accelerated pace. The speed at which the wounds were healing were far faster than if he were to use his radiant saint force to heal. Sensing the drastic change within his body, Jian's heart had skipped a beat. Opening his eyes, he realized that Little Spirit had been in the room with him. From her appearance, he could infer just what had just happened. Big brother. Seeing Jian open his eyes, Little Spirit had revealed a sweet and affectionate smile. Little Spirit, thank you for your assistance. Jian thanked her. As long as Big Brother is fine, then Little Spirit will be happy to help. She giggled. With her assistance, Jian hadn't needed to do a thing. His own body had been recovering at a terrifyingly rapid rate. What would have needed 2 or 3 full days to heal was taking only a single scant minutes before it had fully recovered, allowing Jian to be shocked beyond belief. Big Brother, Little Spirit wants to ask a question. Big Brother better not lie to Little Spirit. She stared carefully at him with apprehension. Little Spirit, what question is it? As long as I know, I'll be sure to help you. Jian asked. Hesitating for a brief moment, she looked hopefully at Jian. Big Brother, have you really not seen Master before? There had been no hesitation when Jian shook his head. Little Spirit, I won't lie to you. I have never seen your master before. He sighed regretfully. Little Spirit had turned melancholic as she listened to Jian's denial and drooped her head down. She was more than aware that her master had been gone for plenty of years, but she was desperate to see her master once more since he was like a parent to her. He was an important figure that she longed to see. Big Brother, Little Spirit will be leaving first then. She spoke as her body began to fade away from the room. Looking to where Little Spirit had previously been in, Jian let out another long sigh before washing away the rest of the blood trails on him. Changing into a new set of clothes, he sat on his bed and began to think about the imprint of death the third elder had placed onto him. The imprint of death looked like a very complicated pattern formed from a series of abstruse runes that imprinted itself on his body as if it were branded deep into his skin. But there had been nothing out of the ordinary that Jian could sense from it. But the fact that he had it had made Jian feel worried. Although he had killed the third elder, this blood debt did not leave any feeling of happiness in him. Since the imprint of death was on him, Jian had no other choice but to give up on going to Longevity Valley and stay within the confines of Mercenary City in order to evade on being killed by the saint ruler of the Shi family. While Elder Xiao in Longevity Valley was a saint ruler himself, Jian had no idea just how strong he was. In the case that Elder Xiao stood no chance against him, then Jian would have only allowed for harm to befall the entire Longevity Valley. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that Elder Xiao would even help Jian fight the other saint ruler. Becoming the enemy to one saint ruler was after all something that would require a far closer relationship with Elder Xiao before Jian could even suggest it. Chapter 609, Arrival of Two Saint Rulers. 2. Meditating on his bed, Jian tried hard to think of the best way to get rid of this imprint of death. If he couldn't, then he would be unable to leave Mercenary City. The imprint of death is formed from the 3 vital energies that can be found within a person. Its importance is the fact that it will leave behind an unerasable mark on the body that can easily be tracked. Hu Xiaotian's words came to mind, causing Jian to feel even more grim. He knew that Hu Xiaotian knew far more about this than he did. If he said that there was no way to erase this imprint, then it was perhaps impossible to really erase the mark the third elder left on him. If that was true, then Jian had to become strong enough to not fear even a saint ruler. If he couldn't, then if the saint ruler from the Shi family came to dispose of him, he would be helpless to do anything but stay within Mercenary City. Even if he used a space gate to travel countless of kilometers away, the imprint of death on him would make him unable to hide. No matter where he would run, the Saint Ruler would give chase. Jian Chen's mind raced to find a solution to his problems. Ming Dong's uncle and grand elder of Mercenary City, Tian Jian, came to mind, as well as the Saint Rulers from the Qinhuang Kingdom. Right now, only those two factions would be able to help him fight off the Shi family. But Tian Jian was a person that was unwilling to interfere in most matters. The last time he had helped out with the Huang family was because of Ming Dong. Tian Jian was an extremely respectful figure within Mercenary City, so unless he personally called out to Jian Chen, there would be no way to meet him again for help. So he had been ruled out. As for the Qinhuang Kingdom, there were 4 other imperial protectors, each one of them saint rulers. With their strength, even the Shi family would be afraid. But the Shi family was not his only enemy. There was still the Jie clan with their own saint ruler. If the two of them were to unite against the Qinhuang Kingdom, then even the Qinhuang Kingdom would feel slightly pressured. When Jian Shen thought about how 2 of the saint rulers had met the saint ruler of the sect of Dragon and Tiger and then came back out with gloomy expression, this had caused some concern for him, as he didn't know just what had happened between the two in the first place. Whether it was some sort of invisible pressure or something else of importance, Jian Shen knew that whatever the case, it was just one disaster on top of another. Thus, having the Qinhuang Kingdom help him with the Shi family and the Jie clan was not a desirable option. Grim, Jian Shen spent almost half the day trying to think of a solution on the bed. Right now he had really no idea just how he would manage both the Shi family and the Jie clan. But even though he could also ask the patriarch of the Huang family, it would without a doubt add to the troubles of their family. They had more than enough to deal with at the moment with their current feud. Am I really going to have to stay within Mercenary City and cultivate until I break through to become a saint ruler? Jian Shen thought as he massaged his temples in frustration. The promise he had made with little Fatty was reaching a year by now with not much time left. If he were to delay any longer, then he would really go over the year-long promise he made with him. Ziying, Qingsua, would you two perhaps know of a way to erase this imprint of death? With no other options, Jian Shen could only hope that the 2 sword spirits would be able to help. Although Hu Xiaotian said there was no way, Jian Shen was unwilling to give up. This time, Ziying and Qingsua had not replied to him. After waiting for a very long time, Jian Shen could finally hear Qingsua's soft voice. Master, Ziying and Qingsua has the power to erase it, but our current power is far too weak for it to be optimal. The imprint on your body was made from the 3 energies of a person and not just pure energy. That means it won't be as easy and will take some time to do so. But Jian Shen had been happy to hear it. How long will it take? With our current strength, I'm afraid it would take 3 months. Ziying spoke before continuing. There is a second option. If Master brings the chaotic force to a considerable degree straight away, then it will swallow up the imprint. That is because the chaotic body is something that will not allow any foreign thing to invade it. We'll go with the first option then. But I'll bring up the chaotic body another time. Upon mention of the chaotic body, Jian Shen felt a headache. The chaotic body was indeed strong, but it was also extremely hard to get. The amount of chaotic force he needed for it was immense as well. A single ruler armament was equivalent to a sliver of chaotic force, and if he wanted to refine that into the chaotic body, then Jian Shen would be at a loss on just how many ruler armaments he needed for that. If he had to absorb the energy of the world, then it would perhaps be tens of years for him to gain that equivalent sliver of a chaotic force. Afterwards, Jian Shen had made the discussions with Ziying and Qingsua to begin and start the 3-month process to get rid of the imprint of death. He had been oblivious to the fact that his feat of killing 4 Heaven Saint Masters by himself was already spreading all around the land with frightening speed. Many people and factions were hearing of Jian Shen's achievements, and so his name was growing farther and farther on the continent. At this current moment within a mountain range, there stood a giant building made of wood. At the center of one of the rooms, a giant beast could be seen sitting peacefully on the ground. Also in the room were several men of considerable age seated at the side. Everyone, I've just received some unfortunate news. The third elder and the ones with him have all died. One of the elders with long hair spoke sorrowfully. Upon hearing that news, everyone else had been startled. What? The third elder is dead? My lord, how could that have happened? The third elders and the others were all completely killed? One of the elders asked in agitation. There was clearly some relationship between he and the third elder. The man seated at the very front of everyone else sighed with sorrow. With a low voice, he spoke, I am sure everyone remembers the one that stole our ruler armament, the seal of Treasure Mountain. Of course. That man is the first ranker of the gathering of the mercenaries, Jian Chen. But he was killed by the combined efforts of the third elder and the ones from the Jita clan. Even now, he has hidden the seal of Treasure Mountain from us. We haven't found hint nor hair of it ever since. We even used countless of methods to try and forcibly recall it, but everything ended in failure. One elder spoke with clenched teeth from his hatred for Jian Chen. My lord, why do you mention Jian Chen now? Could the third elder's death bear relation with him? Another middle-aged man spoke. Correct. It has to do with Jian Chen. The lord of the Shi family spoke with a now serious expression. Yesterday, I managed to receive a report from the third elder using our closed line of communication. The Jian Chen who stole the seal of Treasure Mountain is still alive. Furthermore, he showed up in Mercenary City once more. We had 4 elders go with the third elder to help him capture and reclaim the seal of Treasure Mountain. But what I just received just now was very startling to hear. The third elder and the other 4 have all been completely killed. It was with great costs that the third elder used his life to place the seal of death onto Jian Chen. After the man had finished speaking, everyone had gone deathly quiet. Each of them were far more than tongue-tied, they simply couldn't believe their ears. It was truly hard to believe that the third elder and the other 4 were all killed by Jian Chen's hand. They had heard of Jian Chen's strength before, but seeing how his strength was now at his age, it was beyond their scope of prediction really. His future potential was just that dazzling. That Jian Chen is far too talented. That talent of his allowed him to kill 5 Heaven Saint Masters. It's only a matter of time before he becomes a saint ruler then. My lord, our blood debt with Jian Chen is irreconcilable, we must not let this person live. An elderly voice spoke out, breaking the silence of the hall. The one who had spoken was an elderly old man with wrinkled skin. Yes. The leader of the Shi family nodded. That's right. Jian Chen cannot be allowed to live. Otherwise, when the day comes for when he becomes a saint ruler, he will come seeking our family for trouble. We must take advantage of the fact that he is still within our scope and exterminate him with the speed of lightning itself. Notify the Jita clan of this information. Have them bring some men so that they could stop anyone that Jian Chen might invite. We must lessen the damage on our side as much as possible. Second elder, 5th elder, 6th elder, Elder Shiqing, Elder Shiming, Elder Tianhe, and Elder Gumu, prepare yourselves. Notify us when the men of the Jita clan are here and we will go off to capture Jian Chen. Yes, my lord. The aforementioned people responded. We will adjourn our meeting here today. Everyone may leave. The leader announced, allowing everyone else to leave the halls. Just as they were about to exit the halls, a monumental amount of energy suddenly manifested within the area. Almost as if some sort of malevolent beast of antiquity had finally awakened from its slumber, the entire world had been bathed within the power it brought with it, squashing the air of the Heaven Saint Masters back in their throats. That's the aura of the Patriarch. The Patriarch has broken through. The Patriarch has broken through to the next layer. Fantastic. At our time of need, the Patriarch has overcome it. The elders of the Shi family had been stunned by this change in events, but then this confusion had quickly gave way to joy. Chapter 610, Arrival of 2 Saint Rulers, 3. The area to the back of the Shi family compound was a forbidden place for many people to enter. Only the lord of the Shi family and the elders could convene and gather there. One by one, they looked off to a hole in the mountain with a reverent gaze. Following the sounds of stone being moved aside, the heavy stone gates to the mountain slowly started to rise up, revealing a pitch-dark hole. From within, a middle-aged man dressed in white slowly made his figure known to everyone. Upon seeing this middle-aged man, everyone the lord of the Shi family included genuflected to him and spoke out in respect. Congratulations to the patriarch for breaking through and congratulations on becoming stronger. Ha ha ha, I've been behind closed doors for 20 years now. But I have finally reached one step further in the comprehension of the mysteries of the world. I've reached the 5th heavenly layer. I've made yet another step to becoming a saint king. The man laughed cheerfully. The patriarch is talented beyond all else. Becoming a saint king is only just around the corner then. Our Shi family is only great because of the patriarch. One elder smiled as he flattered the patriarch. In return, the patriarch smiled. Wait for when I reach the 9th heavenly layer of the saint ruler realm and attempt to fuse with the seal of Treasure Mountain. If I manage to do so, then my chances of becoming a saint king will become exponentially higher. But then his expression went askew as he looked towards the group with suspicion. Where is the seal of Treasure Mountain? Why can I not sense its existence? His words had caused the high-ranking elders of the family to grow nervous. Delaying to say anything for some time, the head of the Shi family spoke. Patriarch, because of our inabilities, the seal of Treasure Mountain was lost to us. What? The seal of Treasure Mountain was stolen? The patriarch's face blanched. The joy that he had been feeling from making the breakthrough had instantly slipped off of his face. Afterwards, the lord of the Shi family began to recount the entire tale of what happened to the patriarch without leaving a single word out. After all was told to him, the anger on the patriarch's face slowly drained away. It would appear my initial command for you to steal the lunar bow from the Huang family was a mistake. I had not thought that the barrier I placed on my great-grandson would fail him and lead to his death. The seal of Treasure Mountain was taken as a result as well. The patriarch hummed softly. Patriarch, the 3rd elder left an imprint of death on Jian Chen's body before he died. No matter where he may run, Jian Chen cannot escape from us. We will reclaim the ruler armament with most haste. The lord spoke nervously. Slowly closing his eyes, the patriarch thought for a moment. His mouth opened soon afterwards. I've already sensed his location. But what is strange is that I cannot sense the existence of the seal of Treasure Mountain. It is almost as if my connection with it has been broken. Has this Jian Chen perhaps found a way to hide it from even my own perception? Not only can I not sense it, I cannot even recall the seal of Treasure Mountain even if I exhausted a tremendous price for it. The patriarch hummed. There has been no conflict between us and the Jita clan. They themselves are quite strong as well. Since we've already made enemies with the Huang family, it wouldn't do to make even more enemies. Go and notify the Jita clan of this. Yes, Patriarch. The Lord bowed reverently. You may all leave. I will go find Jian Chen. The seal of Treasure Mountain must be returned as soon as possible to avoid any other unforeseen circumstances. With that said, the patriarch's figure instantly dissolved into a bolt of lightning that shot straight into the sky with speed just as fast as lightning. Since he couldn't sense the seal of Treasure Mountain, it had filled the patriarch with some dread. He had feared that it would mean the eternal loss of the ruler armament. Without it, then when the time came for him to try and break through to become a saint king, the chances of a successful breakthrough would become all the harder. After the patriarch had left, the lord of the Shi family had sent men over to the Jita clan to spread the news and tell them of the whereabouts of the Duanyan sword. The Jita clan had actually received information at the very same time of the Shi family of what happened in Mercenary City. They had learned that the one who stole the Duanyan sword, Jian Chen, was still alive. Furthermore, they learned that it was he that killed 5 elders from the Shi family. When they heard the news, they had immediately sent out a group of people to run for Mercenary City as fast as possible. Even their saint ruler had set out when he heard the news to ensure that the operation would succeed without failure. In the eyes of the Jita clan, Jianchen killing 5 Heaven Saint Master was far too important to disregard. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed since Jianchen killed the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. In those 2 days, Jianchen spent all of his time within his room with the sword spirits trying to purify the imprint of death on his body. It had not been that easy, and even after 2 days, the sword spirits had only managed to get rid of a small speck of it. With this pace, it would take the entirety of the 3 months as they had initially projected to fully eliminate the imprint of death. 2 days after that, Jianchen was only just opening his eyes when a wriggling sensation could be felt. Looking down, he could see the recently awakened tiger cub sprawled over Jianchen's legs in boredom. As if sensing Jianchen awakening, the tiger cub looked up to him with a pitiful glance. Opening its kitten-like maw open, the cub began to purr with a barely audible sound as it scratched one of its paws at the space ring Jianchen wore on his finger. Petting the head of the cub with a soft caress of his fingers, Jianchen spoke, "You are beginning to want even more and more heavenly resources. You've eaten quite a lot of the 1,000-year-old resources already, and you're still a class 4 magical beast. It seems that it'll require plenty more heavenly resources before you can become a class 5. That's more than I have." Despite that, Jianchen was not too stingy with his heavenly resources and handed the tiger cub another 5 or 6 heavenly resources to eat. The cub had let out an excited purr before immediately wolfing down the items given to it. In a short few seconds, it had already eaten them all. With all 6 heavenly resources eaten, the cub laxed itself onto the bed in content and closed its eyes in order to fall back asleep. Seeing the cub act this way, Jianchen shook his head helplessly. But he had allowed the cub to sleep while he walked out from the room. Since he was in Mercenary City, Jianchen wasn't worried about anyone harming the tiger cub. The cub hadn't attracted any outside attention so far, and the only ones that knew of it were Ming Dong and the others. Arriving at the dining halls below, Jianchen sat down by the table and spoke, "Waiter, a platter of roast meat and your finest wine." The waiter had given only one look at Jianchen before his eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh my! You're Lord Jianchen, the king of mercenaries. Please wait one moment, Lord Jianchen, this server of yours will go notify the chefs to prepare your food with all haste." With that said, the waiter flew off towards the kitchens as if the floor beneath his feet was slick with oil. There had been a numerous amount of people in the area, so when the waiter had cried out, plenty of people turned to look over at the source. When their eyes landed upon Jianchen, they too had let out a gasp in both shock and admiration. At that moment, a middle-aged man and elderly figure came walking over from their own tables. Without even giving a greeting, the two of them sat down with hard looks at him. This middle-aged man looked to be around 40 years old and wore simple clothing, a cheap azure robe, and his hair was tossed freely behind him without anything to dress it. It had given him a sense of being a messy person, and there was not a sense of aura coming from him. From what it looked like, he looked to be just the average commoner. As for the other elder, he wore white robes and had hair that was tied together. His 70-year-old face was peaceful looking and seemed to carry around a sagely presence to him. Yet, he too did not have any aura to him, but his face had spoke volumes of the man, marking him to be an extremely capable person. Jianchen had looked at the two without a single sound. But in his mind, he had grown serious. He had no way of ascertaining their strengths, even his presence had came up with nothing definitive. His presence was something that could even detect a Heaven Saint Master if they tried to conceal themselves from him. The only thing he knew that could overcome his presence was an expert at the Saint Ruler realm. "Are you Jianchen?" The middle-aged man spoke calmly. Not a hint of emotion could be heard from him. "Correct. I am he. Who might you two be?" Jianchen replied just as calmly. Although 2 Saint Rulers were seated in front of him, they were no different than to any other person in Mercenary City. "We've waited for you for 1 whole day. At last you've finally come out. This must be the very first time a mere Heaven Saint Master has received such a treatment in history." The middle-aged man spoke. This time, his voice had carried a cold edge to it. Jian Chen, I am from the Shi family, and he is from the Jita clan. We are both saint rulers and came today to have you return our items back to us. You must know that much. The saint ruler from the Shi family spoke. He must have realized that Jian Chen knew the two of them were saint rulers and had thus mentioned it so readily. But to his disappointment, Jian Chen had not reacted at all to this and remained as calm as was before, as if this piece of information had no effect on him at all. So you are the predecessors of the Shi family in the Jita clan, greetings. Jian Chen smiled with his hands cupped together. Even up against two saint rulers with less than agreeable feelings for him, he had remained calm. Jian Chen. You know why we are here. So, are you willing to return what is rightfully ours? From here, we will write off our debts if you do and won't seek trouble with you in the future. The saint ruler from the Jita clan spoke calmly. Giving an apologetic smile, Jian Chen spoke, my apologies. But the items you wish are no longer within my possession. The two saint rulers grew rigid straight away as the saint ruler from the Shi family spoke. Then where are they now? Chapter 6:11, Death of the Saint Ruler of the Shi family. 1. Gone, they don't exist anymore. Jian Chen spoke honestly. As long as he was in Mercenary City, he didn't fear any saint ruler. What? Gone? They don't exist anymore? The saint ruler from the Jita clan had found it hard to remain as calm and had looked confused. His eyes were narrowed coldly as if he was staring daggers at Jian Chen. A ruler armament was far too important to them. Not only was it something more than just a family treasure, it was also an extremely powerful weapon. Correct, the item you want back no longer exists. Jian Chen smiled. A series of emotions flickered through the two saint rulers' faces, but they had quickly calmed down. They hadn't believed that Jian Chen had managed to destroy the ruler armaments, since Jian Chen was only a heaven saint master, and a heaven saint master wouldn't even be able to put a scratch in it with even a heaven tier battle skill. They were after all items that a saint ruler left behind. How could it be that easy for it to be broken? Sneering, Patriarch Shi spoke, Jian Chen, I can see that you're not willing to give back our items. Then let me tell you, the seal of Treasure Mountain has gone through many years as a bonded item to the Shi family. Only those who possess the bloodline of the Shi family would be able to use it. You are not of my family, and neither are you a part of my bloodline. Even if you use some secret method, it would be useless. The item serves no use to you and only adds to your troubles. Why not return it to us and we'll wipe away this grudge? My Shi family won't send any more people to come kill you after. That is right. Jian Chen, I must insist on the return of the ruler armament. Take advantage of when I am willing to negotiate with you to return the ruler armament to me. My Jita clan will write off our debts as well and cause no more trouble with you. You won't need to stay within Mercenary City your entire life. The saint ruler from the Jita clan spoke prudently. While Jian Chen was sitting right in front of the two saint rulers, even they wouldn't move a finger to hurt him in Mercenary City. If Jian Chen stayed within the city without leaving, then they would be powerless to retake the ruler armaments. Rather than to wait around in vain, they would rather take the suave approach and try to reclaim it that way. My apologies, but what I just said should explain it all. The items you want are no longer on my person. Jian Chen spoke, unmoved by their attempts. The saint rulers had a cross look on their faces. To them, this was a terribly bad situation, since they were now worried that their ruler armaments were now in the hands of another great faction. If that was the case, then it would be a very hard matter to reclaim it. Then who has the seal of Treasure Mountain? Patriarch Shi boomed. Pointing up into the sky, Jian Chen replied, no one has it. It has already been lost to this world. Or perhaps to say, it has already become a part of me. The Duanyan sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain had already been turned into chaotic force to temper his body, so he had found this way of saying it to be quite fitting. But Jian Chen's words had been like a clap of thunder to the two saint rulers' ears. Confused and stunned, they stared at him. What? The seal of Treasure Mountain has become a part of you? Have you fused with it? Patriarch Shi shot straight up from his seat and gave a wide-open stare at the other saint ruler in disbelief. Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat when he saw their reactions and heard their question. From this, he realized that there was some sort of use for the ruler armament. Could it be that a ruler armament can be fused with the body? Jian Chen thought to himself. This piece of information was rather valuable since he lacked a weapon at the moment. If he could truly fuse with a ruler armament, then if he forged it with the azulate swords, he could perhaps find a ruler armament compatible with the light wind sword. Unfortunately, while he now knew that the ruler armament could fuse with the body, he didn't know the specific method for it. The two saint rulers in front of him knew, but Jian Chen couldn't simply ask them since it would be a complete fail to do so. Moreover, even if he did know, finding a ruler armament that was compatible with the light wind sword would be a very hard task. Thus, Jian Chen knew that this thought that had only just popped up would not be something that he could accomplish in any reasonable amount of time. No, that can't be possible. The ruler armament is something that a saint ruler left behind. In order to fuse with it, one would have to be a saint ruler at the 9th heavenly layer. You are nothing but a heaven saint master, how could you fuse with a ruler armament? Jian Chen, do you take us for a 3-year-old child that knows nothing better about the world? The saint ruler of the Jeda clan shook his head. In his mind, he was secretly aghast. If his ruler armament was truly fused with Jian Chen's body, then it would be forever lost to him. The words of the saint ruler of the Jeda clan had made Jian Chen sigh. If he wanted to fuse with a ruler armament, he would need to be a saint ruler of the 9th heavenly layer, and that was still quite a distance away. I've said it before. If you two don't believe me, then my apologies. Your junior still has some matters to take care and cannot accompany you any longer. Goodbye. Jian Chen had no longer felt inclined to talk to them any longer and stood up from the table to walk back to his room. In no time at all, he had disappeared from the eyes of the two saint ruler. The two saint ruler had stared at the back of Jian Chen until he had disappeared away from sight. For a good while, neither of the two responded. Ever since they became saint rulers, this was the very first time they had met a heaven saint master that did not show them courtesy. Finally, Patriarch Shi clenched his fists tightly as he stared at the spot where Jian Chen had last been before disappearing. Clenching his teeth as well, he spat, Jian Chen, if you refuse the carrot, then you'll not be spared the whip. Do not blame us. The other saint ruler had sighed at his words. It's unfortunate that this is mercenary city. With just ourselves, we have no way of touching him. Neither do we know where the ruler armaments are, just why can we not sense them if they are so close? They have to be on his body. He must have used some sort of secret method to separate the connection between our ruler armaments and us. But what can we do about it? He still has the imprint of death on his body. No matter where he runs off to, we'll be able to find him. That is, unless he stays within Mercenary City his entire life. Patriarch Shi spoke under his breath before leaving the inn with the other. Not too long after the two saint rulers left, a good portion of the patrons within the inn had done so as well. Each one of them were from many different factions and had been there to spy on the meeting before reporting back to their respective factions. In a corner of the inn, Hu Xiaotian had been eating a platter of barbecued meat by himself. Giving only a vague soliloquy to himself, he spoke. Even after that loud conversation, not a single bit of it could be heard. That must be the power to control space itself. Only a saint ruler could do magic like that. It seems that the enemies of Jian Chen aren't unordinary themselves. Should I help him, I wonder? After a moment's consideration, Hu Xiaotian sighed. The clan has never once meddled with the affair of the continent. And with my strength as a heaven saint master, I'm powerless to help. For the next series of days, Jian Chen spent the entire time within the room having the sword spirits try and remove the imprint of death on him. Not once did he ever step out from the inn. In this time, plenty of people from plenty of factions came to seek out Jian Chen with greetings and promises to help Jian Chen out with his problem. Each one of them had the condition that Jian Chen join their faction, and some of them had been extremely generous so that Jian Chen would be tempted. But Jian Shen had no desire to join them as he did not want to owe any person anything. As more and more factions began to try to recruit Jian Shen into their ranks, the Shi family and Jie clan grew more and more worried. These factions that wanted to recruit Jian Shen weren't too much weaker than they were, and some of them were people that even the two of them were afraid of. Up against this deadly situation, the two of them had no other solution but to watch in silence. Although the two of them had plenty of connections in their own right, they both knew that even if they tried to call upon those connections to fight Jian Shen, it would be useless. Several days later, the third prince of the Qinhuang kingdom, Qin Ji, and several other imperial advisors had came to Mercenary City to find Jian Shen. He and the other four had given Jian Shen a message that allowed Jian Shen to stay even longer in Mercenary City and to not make any more enemies for the Qinhuang kingdom. Qin Ji hadn't stayed within the city for long. He and Jian Shen had only given a few sparse words of conversation before the prince left. He had been in a hurry, giving Jian Shen a bad feeling that something was about to happen to the kingdom. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. In these 2 months, Jian Shen had spent day and night trying to remove the imprint of death. After these 2 months of vigorous work, the imprint of death had 2/3 of it successfully removed. In the case that it was completely removed, then he wouldn't have to worry much anymore and could think of a way to escape the Shi family and Jie clan and gain a new leash on his freedom. In an inn not too far away, the two saint rulers were currently watching the window to where Jian Shen's room was. The ruler armaments were far too important for them to give up, so they could only spend their time observing him themselves without letting him escape. It's been well more than half a month since his last step out of his room. I've heard that he once managed to escape detection while under close watch. Shirqin, Jian Shen has the imprint of death on him thanks to your family, so why don't you check up on it? We should avoid to have a situation where he escapes from under our noses. The saint ruler spoke. Patriarch Shi nodded his head and closed his eyes to sense the imprint of death. But as soon as he did so, his eyes flew open in disbelief. The imprint of death is weakening. It's practically gone. He's managed to remove most of it in such a short amount of time. Even the saint ruler of the Jie clan was surprised. What? He has a way to remove the imprint of death? We have to hurry then. Once that's gone, making sure he's around will be significantly harder. Chapter 612, Death of the Saint Ruler of the Shi family. 2. In the history of the Tianyuan continent, each and every person that had the imprint of death afflicted onto them had been unable to remove it. This was due to the vital energies that were used to create it. The complexity of the patterns were far too much for pure energy to completely remove it. In the case that one was afflicted with the imprint of death, the only way to remove it was to completely exhaust the vital energies within the body as well. A heaven saint master used the energies that he had accumulated for plenty of years for the imprint of death. Without fail, this was a tremendous amount of energy to use. It would require several hundred years if anything to remove. But Jian Shen had not only managed to find a way to do so, he had found a way to do it quickly. This was something that the two saint rulers felt incredulous about. The two of them knew just how important the imprint of death was. In the case that there was no reaction from it, then it would mean that Jian Shen had escaped from their range. Even as saint rulers, it would be hard to find Jian Shen without the imprint of death. The Tianyuan continent was far too vast and had a sea of people to hide within. All in all, it was like finding a needle from a haystack. Jian Shen in this moment was currently resting on the bed with the azure and violet sword spirits working hard to erase the imprint of death. He had been completely oblivious to the fact that the two saint rulers were now aware of what he was doing. Just then, a knock on the door made itself known. The door had been bolted shut with an iron lock, but it had been knocked off its hinges and thrown to the floor unceremoniously to reveal the two saint rulers walking in. Slowly opening his eyes, Jian Shen looked at the two saint rulers with calm eyes. I've underestimated you, Jian Shen. I didn't expect to see that you have a way to remove the imprint of death. How could there be such an easy way to remove the imprint of death? Patriarch Shi spoke dangerously. He had been secretly glad of the fact that the other saint ruler had reminded him. Otherwise, Jian Shen might have really escaped under his nose as soon as the imprint of death was gone. Knowing that the fact that he could remove the imprint of death was now discovered, Jian Shen was not discouraged. He knew that in Mercenary City, there was nothing the two could do even with that knowledge. Seniors, you are quite powerful to realize what I was up to with such little information. But even now that you know this, what can you do? If I had only a little longer, then I would have thrown off the imprint of death and escaped. Jian Shen smiled. You dare. Patriarch Shi boomed with anger as he pointed a finger at him. The imprint of death had been casted by a Heaven Saint Master. If it were so easily removed, then that Heaven Saint Master died in vain. Smiling at the Saint Ruler as if to ridicule him, Jian Shen spoke, this junior would never dare. But don't forget that this is Mercenary City. Would you two seniors really try to fight me here? The expression on Patriarch Shi's face grew even more murderous. His eyes looked as if they could spit fire at Jian Shen, and if looks could kill, then Jian Shen would have been dead just from the man's glance alone. Seeing that Jian Shen had been so smug, the other Saint Ruler couldn't help but give a small smile. Jian Shen, you shouldn't count your eggs before they hatch. Even if you remove the imprint of death, you cannot escape from us still. I've a secret technique that allows me to place a seal to see the location of the person its own. It isn't as powerful as the imprint of death, but it will serve us nicely in this situation. At that, the Saint Ruler began to go through a series of hand gestures. Several illusionary patterns began to exude forth from his hands, and with each hand seal, a strange energy began to form in those patterns. Jian Shen had blanched at that and lost all of his initial calmness. If the Saint Ruler wasn't lying, then with whatever technique the Saint Ruler had on him, Jian Shen would be no better off than before. This was not something Jian Shen had expected. His eyes narrowed with a brilliant cold light as he cautioned the Saint Ruler from the Jetta clan, this is Mercenary City, are you really going to move a hand against me? This technique of mine doesn't hurt the person and neither does it go against any rules of the city. I will be fine and worry-free from the rules. The man spoke with confidence. His hands hadn't stopped moving at all since his previous statement, and the energy that was forming in them had started to grow even more condensed than as they entered the complicated pattern in the air. Bastard! Jian Shen had cursed to himself. With no desire to be stuck with whatever tracking technique the Saint Ruler had, Jian Shen grabbed the still sleeping tiger cub and leapt out the window to escape. Pa! Jian Shen, do you think you can escape from my grasp? The Saint Ruler sneered before rushing out with Patriarch Shi. The outside city had been very busy at that current moment when Jian Shen had dropped to the ground. Bursting with speed into a random direction, Jian Shen had no delusions that he would be able to escape from the two Saint Rulers. They would be able to catch up with him at any time, so Jian Shen had been desperately thinking of what to do as he ran. The most important thing to do at the moment was to escape direct contact from the two. This way, he'd be able to escape the Jetta clan Saint Ruler's technique from being placed onto him. It was unfortunate that there were barely any hiding spots in Mercenary City and that his pursuers were Saint Rulers. If he had perhaps met the conditions in being able to enter the general headquarters to Mercenary City, he could probably be safe. But as of right now, he could not. Jian Shen. In front of a Saint Ruler, you are powerless to run away. At that moment, an elderly voice could be heard as the Saint Ruler from the Jetta clan appeared directly in front of him and blocked his path. Before Jian Shen could even react, the energy in his hands shot forth towards Jian Shen and melted into Jian Shen's body with a speed like lightning. Just as this strange energy entered Jian Shen's body, he immediately felt his entire body grow tense as the energy transformed into a net that surrounded the entirety of his entire body. He felt as if his mobility had been limited thanks to the technique in a fashion not too different from the pressure from a heaven-tier battle skill. He had grown cold when the implications of this technique hit him. Not only did this technique make it easier for the Saint Ruler to find him, but it also limited his very own mobility. As of right now, Jian Shen could feel that it was significantly harder to move in comparison to before. Jian Shen, how does this feeling suit you? This technique of mine doesn't have the same length of range as the imprint of death, but even the imprint of death doesn't boast the same effectiveness of this. It can restrict your movement as long as you are weaker than I am. And until then, there is no way you can break free of this technique." The Saint Ruler laughed in sadistic delight. Clenching his fists tightly, Jian Shen grew even more furious at the man. He had never thought that this would happen to him. The imprint of death he had on him was just nearly removed before this sudden development. This newest event had only meant that his plans would be further delayed by a long length of time. "Big brother. Did you come across trouble again? Are these two people chasing you bad guys?" Suddenly, a voice suddenly made itself clear in Jian Chen's mind. The ethereal body of Little Spirit suddenly materialized right in front of Jian Chen's eyes with her transparent feet hovering just a meter over the ground. It seemed as if her body was only visible to Jian Chen, as the entire street was filled with people, but not a single one of them seemed to have noticed her existence. Little Spirit had sensed the technique that had been used on Jian Chen's body, causing her pure and childlike body to twist up in anger. "Big brother. You're being bullied. Those two must be bad guys. If they are, then don't worry, big brother. Little Spirit will help you." With that, she pointed a finger at Jian Chen. A strange beam of energy flew out from her extended finger and met with Jian Chen's body to instantly dispel the entrapment that had been placed on him. With his technique broken, the Saint Ruler had sensed it as well. Confounded, the Saint Ruler spoke to Jian Chen with some startled disbelief. "But how? I can see that you broke my technique somehow." "No, that shouldn't be possible." "Not possible at all. How could you have enough power to overwhelm my technique?" Patriarch Shi had heard what the other Saint Ruler said and was equally astounded. "This brat is a freak," he muttered. "Not only can he remove the imprint of death, he can even break free from the technique you placed on him. Perhaps there's some sort of treasure on his person? Big brother, don't be surprised and go after them. Beat them down quickly. Teach those baddies a lesson." Little Spirit floated down to Jian Chen's side as she snarled angrily. Because of the fact that Jian Chen was being bullied, Little Spirit was glaring hatefully at the two Saint Rulers. "Little Spirit, this is Mercenary City. It's not a place where I can fight as easily as I want. If I do, then I'll suffer an extremely terrible punishment." Jian Chen spoke reluctantly. "Big brother, don't worry. All of the punishments from Mercenary City were caused by Little Spirit. But Little Spirit won't punish Big brother this time. So hurry up and teach them a lesson. They can't fight back, but if they do, then Little Spirit will definitely punish them. If Master didn't prohibit Little Spirit from hurting people, then Little Spirit would have taken revenge for Big brother already." Jian Chen had been motivated by what Little Spirit had been saying. For the past 2 months, he had been pressured and stifled by the presence of the two Saint Rulers. Today was the day he could finally vent his sufferings to the two without them being able to retaliate. This was something that gave Jian Chen no small amount of joy. He had never once experienced chasing after a Saint Ruler before. A surge of energy began to bubble up from within Jian Chen's body before leaking out of it to spread out to pressure the two Saint Rulers. Grasping at his right hand, Jian Chen began to unleash the origin energy so that it would form into a sword-like item to fight with. The sudden action of Jian Chen had caught the attention of the entire street. When they saw the strange look in his eyes, everyone had thought that they were about to see Jian Chen start to fight within the city. One by one, they shook their heads with a pitying laugh. In today's age, just what person didn't know about the prohibition on fighting that Mercenary City enforced? When the two Saint Rulers saw what Jian Chen was doing, Patriarch Shi looked at him as if he was an idiot. "Jian Chen, don't tell me you're planning to start a fight within the city. That's an action of someone who is tired of living. Jian Chen. Even we too are afraid of fighting in Mercenary City. You are only a Heaven Saint Master. If you wish to continue living, then cease what you're doing. Otherwise, there will be no one to save you." The Saint Ruler from the Jeddah clan sneered. Chapter 613, Death of a Saint Ruler. 3. Jian Chen could only laugh when the two saint rulers spoke. How could they know about the new relationship between Little Spirit and him? With Little Spirit giving her guarantee, Jian Chen could fight within Mercenary City without regard of the rules and the violations. He was after all aware of the connection between Little Spirit and the man known as Mo Tianyun. More accurately, the man known as the founder of Mercenary City. With such a peculiar identity as that, Little Spirit was without a doubt a very important entity of the city itself. It was unknown however whether or not Little Spirit had a status that was even larger than Tianjin. Without any more hesitation, Jian Chen flickered towards the two saint rulers to stab at the forehead of the nearest saint ruler without mercy. Startled, the saint ruler from the Jetta clan had taken a step back. He didn't think that Jian Chen would indeed start to fight in Mercenary City. Instead of fighting back, the man had merely stepped away from the attack with a smile. Jian Chen, you really do fear nothing if you are willing to fight in Mercenary City. Your death is inevitable now, no one can save you anymore. There had been no response from Jian Chen. Instead, his entire figure blurred away into thin air as he charged once more after the saint ruler. There had been no need to hold back against a saint ruler, so the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits had been utilized to the best of his efforts. Glowing with a bright azure and violet light, it seemed to light up the entire area as if it were a lantern at night. The saint ruler from the Jetta clan didn't dare fight back while he was in Mercenary City. He knew the consequences of those who did, and so he had merely dodged Jian Chen's strikes instead of retaliating. Only his body could be seen flickering back and forth between places as he dodged each strike without difficulty. Even though Jian Chen was trying his best, it had been completely ineffective against a saint ruler. A saint ruler was on a completely different level from a heaven saint master. They were entities that understood the supreme mysteries of the world to some degree and could control the fabric of space to a minor extent. By borrowing the power of space, they could stand completely still like a wooden stake impaled in the ground and still remain unhurt by a heaven saint master. In front of a saint ruler, all else were ants. To intimidate a saint ruler would require another saint ruler. But even though Jian Chen couldn't injure the saint ruler, he wasn't discouraged by the fact. He could fight without fear or needing to hold back unlike the other two. Chasing after the saint ruler relentlessly, he had managed to force the saint ruler into dodging. This had served as a cathartic form of delight to him on a personal level. As of right now, he wanted nothing more but to let loose to the heavens and let loose the frustrations that had been accumulating in him. Leaping up into the air, Jian Chen wielded the sparkling origin energy like a sword to stab at the saint ruler from the Jetta clan. Once more, the saint ruler had flickered away, leaving behind only a mirror image at his previous spot and reappearing several hundred meters away on top of a nearby roof. The origin energy that Jian Chen had shot out impacted against the ground, resulting in a tremendous explosion that rocked the entire area and caused several of the nearby buildings to tremble slightly. But from where the origin energy had struck the ground, there had been no signs of damage even despite all the power that had been contained in the blow. The sudden explosion had been carried farther away however, resulting in people everywhere being surprised by the sound. One by one, they had revealed a shocked look. It had been unknown just how often they were able to hear the sounds of a battle take place in Mercenary City, but not a single one of them had thought that there would be yet another person that would try to do so. There's someone fighting over there. Who's the suicidal idiot? To fight in Mercenary City, does he not know the prohibition and the punishment that'll take place after it? The guy has to be strong based on the sound of that explosion. I bet it's a heaven saint master at the very least. Let's hurry on over to watch. Let's see just how that offender's going to die. Let's hurry on over to see what punishment will befall him. I've heard before that to try and fight in this city would lead to a painful experience, but I didn't think that it would actually be death that'll befall the offender. Plenty of people began to talk to one another on the streets as they ran from every direction to converge onto the area where Jian Chen and the two saint rulers were. Every single one of them had wanted to see the man who would be struck by the punishment of Mercenary City before he died. In the blink of an eye, the previously sparse strip of street Jianchen was on had become a cacophony of sounds. Merchants and mercenaries alike had abandoned whatever they were doing to fly over to the area as soon as possible, whether it was on foot or on magical beast. With the commotion being spread farther and farther away, more and more people began to converge into the area to watch the spectacle. On one hand, they wanted to watch a good fight, and on the other hand, they were curious to see just what punishment would befall the offender. Everyone had heard of how the punishment would be severe, but the details of it had never been fully divulged. Soon enough, the fight between Jianchen and the saint ruler from the Jie clan had drawn practically everyone within the surrounding area. Some of the spectators had even been people with major influence and groups behind them. That's Jianchen. AI, how could he be so foolhardy? Doesn't he know about the prohibition on fighting that mercenary city has? Even if he's a heaven saint master, he'll suffer the punishment from the barrier without fail. An elder wearing red robes sighed. It was the man from the Vulcan shrine. The man with the fan from the Daong clan had sighed as well, as if he was feeling regret. Jianchen's death is inevitable. It's truly a shame. It's hard to come across a genius like this, but he decided to be so foolish as to start a fight in Mercenary City. Even if the Grand Elders of Mercenary City were to try and intervene, Jianchen's fate would still not be changed. I didn't think that it'd be the king of mercenaries, Jianchen, of all people, to be the one to start fighting. AI, how lamentable. He was a genius with no parallel. But now he will fall today here in Mercenary City. Does he not know that Mercenary City has prohibited fighting? In the case that there is a violation of the rules, then even a saint ruler would not be spared from the following consequences. This Jianchen is really too reckless. AI, his unlimited potential will be stopped here today. He could have been a saint ruler in the future if it weren't for this act today. Recognizing Jianchen as the offender, plenty of people had shook their heads with pity. The prohibition on fighting had been a rule that was set in stone since countless of years ago. In the history of those who broke this prohibition, each one of them had been penalized severely. Even saint rulers had fallen to this rule, while the weaker ones would quite often not even have their bones left behind to bury. So everyone thought that the heaven saint master, Jianchen, would fall as well, even if he was the king of mercenaries. As of right now, Jianchen was pursuing the saint ruler from the Jie clan without reprieve. The origin energy in his hand shot forth continuously from his right hand, but it had never been able to land a clean hit onto the saint ruler. Each time, the man had dodged the strikes with ease, allowing the ray of origin energy to fly off unimpeded into the buildings to the side of the streets with a loud explosion. While the streets of the city were protected by a mysterious power to such an extent that the origin energy couldn't even leave a dent in them, the buildings were not covered by such a power. The very moment the bursts of origin energy had crushed the buildings like it was tofu and reduced it to scraps of metal. Watching Jianchen continue to try and pursue him, the saint ruler laughed coldly. Jianchen, prepare to die. Then, borrowing the power of space, he warped over to another spot 100 meters away to dodge Jianchen's strike. You from the Shi family, are you willing to fight against me? A mighty saint ruler is being forced back by an insignificant heaven saint master. Don't you think that's a bit an insult to your grand rank? Jianchen jeered. It was not a very easy opportunity to find a time to fight a saint ruler like this. Because of the tremendous difference in strength, there was simply no competition between the two, and that had weighed heavily on Jianchen. With a thought, the energy of the world began to rotate the wind elements around his body. With lightning-quick speed, he flew towards the saint ruler from the Jie clan and extended his arms out. 3 bursts of sword chi flew out from his hand and arced through the air with the spectrum of a rainbow. Boom! As soon as the 3 bursts of sword chi zoomed towards the saint ruler, the man had dodged it easily once again to the side, allowing the sword chi to cause a nearby restaurant to tremble from the blast. Several wooden splinters could even be seen flying off. Get out of the way or get hurt in their fight. Someone from the crowd had cried out a warning so that the other people in it could be warned to run as far as they could away from the scene of the carnage in fear. Although they were all strong in their own right, but they didn't dare act out in even a defensive manner to protect themselves in fear of being struck down by the punishment of the city. Since they couldn't use their own power to defend, they could only try to get away so as to not be mixed up in what Jian Chen was doing. Patriarch Shi had not been angry at Jian Chen's response. Instead, he laughed coldly. Jian Chen, your words mean nothing to me. The commotion you've caused in Mercenary City has already incurred severe consequences upon yourself. You will die today, and I won't be dragged down to the underworld with you. Clenching his teeth tightly, Jian Chen spoke no more and chased down the other saint ruler. Despite the fact he couldn't hit him, he was determined to have him forced into something. Strange, he's fought long enough already, and several restaurants were destroyed by him by now. Why hasn't the city punished him yet? This isn't what the legends say about the city at all. An elder spoke curiously from within the crowd. Patriarch Shi stared up at the gigantic barrier that spanned across the entire mercenary city in surprise. Then, looking back to Jian Chen as he fought the other saint ruler, he muttered, "What is going on? Jian Chen has already fought for long enough, why hasn't the punishment befallen him yet?" In the center of Mercenary City, not too far away from the statue of Mo Tianyun, there was a giant palace that was established as the mansion of the city lord. But to uphold Mo Tianyun's sovereignty even after his departure, a second city lord was never declared, and so the palace had been reformed to serve as a connection to the outside world. Within the palace, several white-robed heaven saint masters floated in midair as they listened to the faraway sounds of battle. Each one of them had signs of confusion on their faces. A report for the elders. My body can't move. Not even a single finger. The voice of the still frozen elder could suddenly be heard as he cried out in panic. Boom! Just at that moment, an explosion could be heard straight ahead as a giant restaurant came crashing down in the midst of smoke spiraling up into the air. The battle had not seemed to have been weakening in the slightest. Instead, it was ramping up in ferocity. There are people fighting there, so why hasn't the barrier punished the offenders? How peculiar. One of the elders spoke in confusion. Turning to look at the two elders next to him, he spoke, "No matter who they are, if they dare fight in Mercenary City, they cannot be pardoned. 23rd Elder, 24th Elder, you two will go over there and handle the situation. I will see what happens from there." With that, the elder pointed at the stuck heaven saint master in the sky. The two elders nodded their head before disappearing in a blur of mirror images towards the scene of the battle. But just as they traveled a mere 10 meters, their bodies seemed to have made contact with some sort of invisible barrier and caused their forward momentum to come to a screeching halt before being sent flying backwards. Boom! The two elders impacted against the walls of the palace ruthlessly, sending a tremendous shake throughout the palace. You two. What's going on? The 22nd elder spoke in absolute stupefaction. He couldn't believe his eyes on what he was seeing. The 23rd and 24th elder staggered up from the ground in pain as they stared at the empty space of air where they used to be. That's the power of the barrier. The barrier just repelled us. But no. That shouldn't possible. How could the barrier have that power to stop us? What? You were stopped by the barrier, is that true? The 22nd elder gasped out in disbelief. It is absolutely true. The two of us have lived in Mercenary City for long enough. Do you think that we would be unfamiliar with what the barrier feels like? It was the barrier that stopped us, but I don't know why. Just why is this happening? This can't be a small matter, we must notify the Grand Elder. The 24th Elder spoke with determination. Disappearing into the palace without further notice, he left behind the still confused 23rd and 22nd Elder. This sudden development had caused a tremendous amount of pressure to fill the hearts of the two elders. As soon as the 24th Elder left, the 22nd and 23rd Elder were left immobile in place and could only watch the fight from far away. The barrier over Mercenary City had served as the city's patron guardian since it was created. For countless of years, it silently protected the entire city, making it something like a god to some of the inhabitants of the city that could not be offended. Not only was it a part of the long-standing history of Mercenary City, the most important thing about this barrier was that it was created by the one known as the strongest person on the Tianyuan continent, Mo Tianyun. This had brought up a completely different feeling for the barrier than previously considered, and many had seen the barrier as something that represented the glory of Mercenary City even. So when the barrier that had been previously silent as it protected the city before suddenly prevented the elders from stopping this battle, the 22nd and 23rd elder had been dumbfounded. For countless of years, they had never seen something like this happen before, where even they of the city were stopped. All of a sudden, the space in front of the two elders began to ripple as if it were water. Then, a fissure formed in the middle of the space to form a dimensional gate for three white-robed elders to step on over through. One elder was standing up front while the other were stood behind. The one in front was a middle-aged man with black hair and a steadfast face. His eyes were incomparably bright, as if they contained all of the stars in the sky. Just by staring at them, it seemed as if it would be possible to be lost in them. This person was Ming Dong's uncle Tian Jian. The two men behind Tian Jian looked to be around their 70s. With their long hair and time-worn faces, their eyes seemed to look as if it had lived through countless years of living and had seen all sorts of things that happened to the world. As of now, they looked to be men that had rejected the mundane world in order to live a secluded life, and the aura that they exuded around their bodies was anything but ordinary. We pay our respects to the Grand Elder, Second Elder, and Fourth Elder. The two elders immediately moved to bow their bodies as a sign of great respect. The sight of these three elders were enough to instill both respect and fear into the two. What is going on here? Tian Jian spoke out at once. Grand Elder, there are people fighting in Mercenary City. The 24th Elder and I have tried to stop them, but the barrier not only stopped us, it threw us back into the palace. The 23rd Elder spoke. The three elders that had just arrived had been shocked to hear that. Turning around to look at the scene of the fight, the Grand Elder had been able to see the situation as if it were happening right in front of him. It's him. As soon as the scene was made available to him, Tian Jian let out a surprised sound. Grand Elder, do you perhaps know the one that is fighting? The second elder asked. Nodding his head, Tian Jian responded, the one fighting the Saint Ruler is called Jian Chen. He's the one that won the gathering of the mercenaries. As far as his talents go, he's someone that can only be seen once every 10,000 years. Smiling, the second elder spoke, if the Grand Elder is able to praise him, then this Jian Chen is surely quite the person then. But this youngster is far too rash if he's starting a fight in Mercenary City. Does he not know the consequences of fighting in Mercenary City? Still, it's strange, why hasn't the barrier punished him yet? I find that strange as well. But we must move to stop him. If we allow this to continue, we may see the death of such a talented genius happen. That would be far too unfortunate. Tian Jian commanded before urging his body to move out towards the scene of the battle. Don't move. You shall not pass. Suddenly, the voice of a young woman made its way into the elder's ears. Tian Jian's body had immediately seized up before he looked around the place with astonishment. Are you the spirit of the barrier? For a good while, he did not speak. But then when he did, his voice had been filled with shock. Even as he asked, he felt as if his ears were deceiving him. You can say that. But you still can't go there. Don't bother with what's happening, or Little Spirit will hurt you. Little Spirit's words had caused Tian Jian and the others to become as silent as a statue. When it came to status, they were the leading figures of Mercenary City and could make use of the city as they saw fit. When it came to power, they stood at the very top of the power pyramid of the continent. So to have what seemingly felt like a young woman threaten these powerful men, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But neither Tian Jian nor the second or fourth elder had felt discontent at her words. As if everything was as right as rain, they had decided to stand there obediently to observe the situation without interfering. From there, They could watch Jian Chen violate the rules of Mercenary City without being able to do a single thing about it. That was because the spirit of the barrier had an extremely unique status in Mercenary City. Spirit of the barrier, I never would have imagined that I would hear it speak. The legends are true after all. The barrier that protects Mercenary City is sentient. The 23rd elder remarked passionately. The 4th elder sighed in response, I've lived in Mercenary City for 4 millenniums now, but this is the very first time I've heard the spirit of the barrier speak. This is truly an honor to me. What year did I think that it would be before I could hear the legendary spirit of the barrier? Even if it is just the voice, I am satisfied with this. To what I know, the spirit of the barrier hasn't been seen or heard for 10,000 years already. But it has appeared this time with the appearance of Jian Chen and has forbidden us to take action. Perhaps there is a connection between the two. Otherwise, for what reason would the spirit of the barrier protect Jian Chen to the extent where no punishment has been inflicted? The 2nd elder murmured with confusion and disbelief. Jian Chen and the spirit of the barrier had a connection? That was quite hard to believe. I am curious about this matter as well. It would seem that Jian Chen isn't as normal as I thought. Tian Jian spoke questioningly. Continuing to pursue the saint ruler, Jian Chen had without fail tried to attack the man, to the surprise and discussions of everyone else around them on the streets. Each one of them were extremely curious on how Jian Chen had managed to escape punishment. What's going on? Why hasn't the spirit of the barrier punished you yet? Has the barrier lost its power, or is the punishment no longer in place? The saint ruler could finally hold it in no longer and cried out in frustration. Patriarch Shi's eyes light up with a strange light as he listened to the saint ruler. The barrier has to have lost its power. That's why it hasn't punished him yet. Jetta Tai, what are you worried about? Attack him. With that, Patriarch Shi had immediately moved into action to send a palm strike at Jian Chen. Following the palm strike, the space around Jian Chen seemed to solidify as Jian Chen's body was suddenly rendered unable to move. As if he was stuck underwater, not even a finger of his could be moved and made dodging impossible. Around the Patriarch's palm was a strong amount of saint force that continued to grow faster and faster. Even around the palm itself, the space began to distort and tear as if threatening to open up a hole in space itself. The power that was in this palm strike was far stronger than what a Heaven Saint Master could equal to, even if they used a Heaven tier battle skill. But just half a step before the palm strike could make contact, a sudden beam of light came flying down from the heavens to strike him down with the speed of lightning. Chapter 6:15. Return to the floating shrine. The beam of light had been extremely scorching in its light and basked the entire world in a radiant light. With unbelievable speed, it had been brought down onto the head of Patriarch Shi before anyone could even react. The rest of the Patriarch's body grew rigid following the advent of the light. His palm came to a stop in midair, and the furious amount of energy that had been warped around the palm disappeared into the world without a trace, without the Patriarch controlling it. Even the space around Jian Chen's body had begun to return to normal, allowing Jian Chen freedom in being able to move once again. As soon as Jian Chen felt his body go back to normal, he immediately leapt backward several steps in retreat to get as far away from the Patriarch as possible. That palm strike of his just now had caused him to be completely terrified of the power. A saint ruler's strength was indeed far too strong. The saying that all were like ants in front of a saint ruler was without a doubt true. Even with his strength, Jian Chen simply had not enough power or strength to dodge the saint ruler and could only await death patiently. A Heaven Saint Master was only a tier away from a saint ruler in tier, but in terms of power, the difference was akin to the difference between heaven and earth. There was nothing that could make up that deficient, and even heaven tier battle skills wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap. As if struck by a curse, Patriarch Shi's body had been stuck hovering in midair. The spirit in his eyes had long since left, making his eyes vacant in expression. Then, his body began to tilt to the side before falling back down to the ground and crashing onto it without any further movements. In mid-air, Jian Chen stared at the saint ruler sluggishly. He had been surprised to see the sight in front of him. A saint ruler had actually died? He hadn't been the only one. The spectators who had originally thought that the punishment of Mercenary City wouldn't fall had all immediately turned silent. They all stared at the motionless body of the saint ruler in utter disbelief and did not speak for the longest time. This sudden development had taken the saint ruler of the Jetta clan completely off guard. He had immediately taken back his palm when he saw what happened to Patriarch Shur, and even his entire body began to shake. It could be seen from this that even he was completely filled with terror. And no. That can't be. The one who struck first was clearly Jian Chen. Why was he the one to escape punishment instead of Patriarch Shur, who struck only afterwards? This is impossible. The saint ruler cried out in disbelief. The fact that the barrier of Mercenary City had ignored punishment for Jian Chen had given him no small amount of fear. As of now, the saint ruler was completely besides himself. By now, the streets were so jam-packed with people that even water wouldn't be able to make its way through. Not a single one of them spoke, however, leaving the place to be completely still. Only the continuous sounds of breathing could be heard as everyone stared at the dead corpse of the saint ruler in silence. Even Jian Chen himself was completely still, as if some sort of curse had petrified him. He was no longer as awe-inspiring as before with his movements, as he was now looking at the completely dead corpse of the saint ruler. He had been killed just like that so easily, and Jian Chen had been utterly astounded by it. Big brother, what are you so stunned about? There's still a baddie over there, hurry up and beat him. Don't let him get away. If the baddie doesn't fight back, then Little Spirit can't hit him. Little Spirit's voice suddenly made itself known in Jian Chen's ear before her body suddenly materialized in front of him with both of her fists brandished outwards as if ready to punch the saint ruler. Startled awake by Little Spirit, Jian Chen immediately quashed the feeling in his heart and rushed for the saint ruler. Seeing that Jian Chen was rushing at him, the saint ruler had blanched. No longer wishing to stay within Mercenary City, his body flickered away with the speed of light before finally disappearing from Jian Chen's sight. Don't let the baddie get away. Big brother, chase him down, hurry. Little Spirit spoke out anxiously from the side again and again. If not for the fact that she couldn't attack the saint ruler, she would have perhaps helped Jian Chen earlier to strike him down. A bitter smile appeared on Jian Chen's face. Little Spirit, you overestimate my abilities. He is a saint ruler, how could I even catch up to him? That baddie ran away. He runs too fast. Little Spirit spoke hatefully. She had held a grudge against the two men that were bullying the one she regarded as her big brother. Slowly descending back down from the skies, Jian Chen looked at the corpse of Patriarch Shur in silence for a moment. Then squatting down next to it, Jian Chen took the space ring of his. Inside would be the items that a saint ruler would have and would undoubtedly be far more precious than what could be found within what a heaven saint master would have. Suddenly, Jian Chen swung his head to look up only to see several people flying on over. In a moment, they arrived right in front of Jian Chen, and when Jian Chen saw the middle-aged man heading the front, he immediately spoke out in respect. Junior Jian Chen pays his respects to Senior. Jian Chen arced his body down politely. The person in front of him was Ming Dong's uncle, Tianjian. Tianjian stared at Jian Chen with an extremely complicated expression before looking to the recently deceased body of Patriarch Shur. Jian Chen, come with me. At the final syllable, Tianjian turned around to leave without a single ripple of space being affected by his movement as he flew away. At the same time, a strange energy enwrapped around Jian Chen's body before it carried him up into the air and towards the center of Mercenary City. Afterwards, Jian Chen followed Tianjian and the other elders through a series of space gates before finally returning to the floating shrine that stood alone in its own special space. The 22nd elder and 23rd elder had not followed them, and only Tianjian, the 2nd and 4th elder, followed Jian Chen into the shrine. Jian Chen turned around to look at the shrine curiously. This would be the second time he had seen this place before, but perhaps it was because his strength was far stronger than before that Jianchen felt that this shrine felt extremely different than before. Standing at the center of the shrine, Jianchen felt as if he was some sort of insignificant speck within the boundless space itself. In the shrine, there was a mysterious and profound sensation that would flow about the place and bask Jianchen within that feeling. Even if Jianchen were to try and pinpoint this feeling, he would not be able to. Jianchen knew that this shrine had to be filled with the profound mysteries of the world and was a place that would be good to break through to become a saint ruler. Such a great opportunity was standing right in front of him, but he was completely unable to enjoy this great bounty and could only watch as the profound mysteries of the world flow by his body. Right in front of Jianchen, Tianjian and the two elders stood shoulder to shoulder as they observed him. It was the second and fourth elder most especially that were watching Jianchen with undisguised shock, praise, and a slight amount of curiosity. Nervously, Jianchen stood at the center of the shrine. He knew that these three men held unbelievably important statuses within Mercenary City and was thus afraid that reprimand or punish him for violating one of the rules of Mercenary City. After all, he had caused a tremendous ruckus within the city, and not only did he destroy multiple buildings, he had caused Mercenary City itself to be negatively influenced by the fact that he escaped punishment. Jianchen, are you able to tell me just how you were able to fight within Mercenary City without punishment befalling you? An echo sounded out through the shrine as Tianjian finally broke the silence. Although he knew that the spirit of the barrier was connected, he wanted to understand just how close the two were and what their relationship was. Jianchen gave a small hum to think before replying, everything was because of Little Spirit's help. How did Little Spirit help you? How do you even know Little Spirit? The second elder suddenly blurted out. As he was now, the second elder was extremely nervous and curious to know the answer of this question. Jianchen hesitated. He had no idea just how to answer this question since even he was confused how Little Spirit and he were connected. He couldn't exactly say that he had the scent of Mo Tianyun on him and that Little Spirit had decided him to be a family member almost. Don't you bully Big Brother. Just at that moment, Little Spirit's voice rang through the entire shrine. Her ethereal body made an appearance within the shrine, and even though entrance within the shrine itself was extremely difficult, she had done so without difficulty. This time, she had not bothered to hide her body so Tianjian and the two elders were able to see her clearly. Spirit of the barrier. The three elders spoke out all at once in surprise. Looking at Little Spirit, the three of them remained stunned for a very long time. This would be the very first time they would see Little Spirit. Although the spirit of the barrier had existed for countless of years, it had never once appeared in front of them and had long since become a legend of Mercenary City. This was the very first time many of the elders had ever seen or heard the barrier of the spirit. And to see her in person caused the three elders to feel excited and joyous. Floating just 3 inches away from Jianchen's side, Little Spirit spoke earnestly, Big Brother, you don't need to be afraid. As long as Little Spirit is here, they won't bully you. And then turning to the three, she continued to speak, you are not allowed to bully Big Brother or else Little Spirit will hit you. The three elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they heard what Little Spirit said. From this, they could all understand that there was undoubtedly a deeper relationship between the two, but that had been very shocking to them. None of them had known just how Jianchen was able to meet with Little Spirit, and so the mystery had only thickened. Spirit of the barrier, worry not. We will not bully your big brother. Tianjian smiled as he spoke to Little Spirit with respect. This was the silent guardian that had protected Mercenary City for countless of years. Her position in the city was irreplaceable, and furthermore, as a creation left behind by Mo Tianyun, this meant she was a being that existed during the time of Mo Tianyun. It was only after hearing those words that Little Spirit began to relax. Turning to look at Jianchen, she spoke, Big Brother, Little Spirit will leave first. We can play after you come out. Understood. Jianchen smiled and nodded his head towards her in response. Revealing a sweet smile, Little Spirit's body began to fade away from sight before disappearing without a trace. After Little Spirit left, the three elders looked back to Jian Chen once more with an even more complicated look than before. Jian Chen, I had no idea that you had such a relationship with the spirit of the barrier. I am truly speechless at this sight. Tian Jian sighed. But then, his eyes suddenly noticed the tiger cub that was starting to look around the place with great curiosity. Brought into a daze once more, his eyes immediately focused into a serious expression as he asked, Jian Chen, where did you get that magical beast on your shoulder? Seeing the sudden change in Tian Jian's expression, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. Hiding away the cub in his embrace, he gave a hollow smile. Senior, this is Xiao Bai. I found him in the magical beast mountain range. Let me see. Tian Jian boomed. Then without making any visible movements, Tian Jian had suddenly surrounded the tiger cub in a mysterious energy as it was in Jian Chen's arms. Separating the cub from Jian Chen, Tian Jian had the cub float 3 meters away towards where he was. Suddenly, 2 bright golden rays of light shot forth from Tian Jian's eyes and basked the tiger cub's body within it. Hesitating from where he stood, Jian Chen took it into consideration for a while longer before finally deciding to say everything he knew about the tiger cub. As of now, the king of the Gilligan clan was after the tiger cub, and even the mother of the cub had nearly died to the king. That could be said that despite the tiger cub's strength, the leader of the magical beast clan would without a doubt have a blood debt with it. But even in the future when the cub grew up, it was possible that the cub would not bring calamity to the continent. Besides, with his relationship with the cub, Jian Chen was convinced that if something were to happen, he would still be able to convince the tiger cub into not doing anything dangerous. Afterwards, Jian Chen revealed all that he knew and all that he had heard to Tian Jian and the 2 elders, causing the 3 to furrow their eyebrows. The winged tiger god is a divine beast, but if the king of the Gilligan clan is chasing after it, it seems this situation is extremely complicated. If my expectations aren't wrong, then the ones chasing after the winged tiger god want to take its corpses and inheritance before absorbing it into their own body to become a second divine beast. The second elder speculated grimly. It's possible. If any of the magical beasts were to receive the inheritance, then it would be a catastrophe for our continent. Even if the entire continent were to ally itself with the Bai clan, it wouldn't be a match for the magical beast clan. The 4th elder spoke seriously as well. Hearing the 3 speak, Jian Chen knew that the matters were extremely grim and could not help but think heavily. Still staring at the cub, Tian Jian spoke, 2nd elder, 4th elder, do you 2 perhaps remember the first law left behind by the Grand Elder? Of course. The Grand Elder's laws are something that Lord Mo Tianyun himself left behind. We have memorized all of the laws on it. It seems the Lord was prophetic with his level of foresight. Perhaps he realized that the continent would see a second winged tiger god that would see persecution from one of the magical beast clan. That must be why he wrote the laws. The 4th elder spoke. What laws, will they harm Xiao Bai? Jian Chen asked in concern. As he stood in the shrine, his entire body could barely uphold itself due to his worry. He couldn't even protect himself in the shrine, let alone the tiger cub. And so he was extremely worried that one of these rules would harm the cub. Shaking his head with a smile, Tian Jian spoke, Jian Chen, don't worry. Way back then, Lord Mo Tianyun made several laws that contracted all of the Grand Elders in it. It is equal to the laws of Mercenary City, and the very first one says that should we ever come across a winged tiger god that hasn't yet fully matured, we must lend it a helping hand. Jian Chen had been stupefied. Still skeptical, he asked, does that mean to say that not only will you not cause trouble for Xiao Bai, you'll be helping it? Correct. It is as you say. Although we don't wish to do so, for the sake of preventing disaster, we will honor the laws the Grand Elders put down. The 4th elder spoke. Thank you very much, seniors. Jian Chen spoke in relief and excitement. There's a few scant records about the winged tiger god in Mercenary City. Its talent is beyond the norm of any single person and doesn't require the guidance of any human. Thus, what we can do to help it is quite limited, but the growth of such a tiger is very slow. The only way for it to grow as fast as it can is to feed it a large amount of heavenly resources. As such, we can only really give it some heavenly resources for it to mature. Tianjian spoke before moving his lips slightly to speak in secret to the men outside. Seeing that Tianjian was planning on giving the cub even more heavenly resources, Jian Chen had been ecstatic. In this moment, it was like receiving charcoal in the middle of a snowstorm, since Xiao Bai was currently lacking a stable amount of heavenly resources. After using up most of the ones he bought recently, Jian Chen was practically all out of heavenly resources to feed the cub. At that moment, an old man came walking in from the outside of the shrine. Presenting a space ring to Tianjian, he spoke, "Shrine Lord, I've accomplished your command. All there is to be found is in this space ring." Taking the space ring, he spoke, "You may leave." "By your leave, Shrine Lord." The elder retreated with a respectful salute. Walking slowly over to Jian Chen, Tianjian handed over the space ring to him. "Jian Chen, since the winged tiger god is accompanying you, then I may as well give this space ring to you. Inside is all that was left behind for the winged tiger god. In total there is 100,000-year-old heavenly resources, 110,000-year-old heavenly resources, and 1,000,000-year-old heavenly resources." Hearing this astronomical number, Jian Chen had been stunned. Heavenly resources 100,000 years old, he hadn't even heard of such ones before Tianjian had mentioned them. There were also the 110,000 heavenly resources, which were each worth several million purple coins per head. And then with the 1,000,000-year-old heavenly resources, this was a tremendous windfall of heavenly resources. It was the 100,000 heavenly resources most especially that made this sum extremely priceless. Jian Chen received the space ring from Tianjian with trembling hands as he spoke, "Many thanks, Senior." Chuckling, Tianjian spoke, "There's no need for your thanks. These heavenly resources were given to you in accordance to the laws put down by the Lord many years ago. They are not for you specifically." Jian Chen gave an embarrassed smile at that. The tiger cub was now capable of moving by itself and jumped back onto Jian Chen's neck. As it held tightly onto it with its 4 short paws, the tiger cub stared at Tianjian. Although it was a divine beast, it was still a young child equivalent to a 3-year-old human. The winged tiger god requires a tremendous amount of heavenly resources, and the heavenly resources I've given you has already emptied our farms by 2/3. But that alone should be enough to bring the cub up to a class 6 magical beast or the peak of it. Afterwards, you must go find some more heavenly resources by yourself. After the winged tiger god becomes strong enough, 1,000-year-old and even 10,000-year-old heavenly resources won't have any effect on its growth. Tianjian explained. "This junior understands. Thank you for your warning, Senior." Jian Chen replied gratefully. "You may leave, Jian Chen. But remember to safeguard this secret of the winged tiger god. Do not let anyone else learn of it." Tianjian reminded him seriously. "This junior understands." Afterwards, Jian Chen took the space ring with the heavenly resources and left the shrine. From there was a single heaven saint master that led him through several space gates to return to Mercenary City. "Big brother, did they cause trouble for you?" As soon as he returned to Mercenary City, Little Spirit's voice could be heard in Jian Chen's ear as her body materialized nearby him without a sound. Nodding his head, Jian Chen looked to her. "Little Spirit, thank you for your help." He, as long as Big Brother is fine, then all is well. Big Brother is the only one that Little Spirit sees as family besides Master in all these years after all. Little Spirit spoke happily. Chapter 617, Minor Achievement with the Chaotic Body. 2. News of the fact that a saint ruler had been killed by the barrier of Mercenary City spread like wildfire throughout the entire city shortly afterwards. Practically anyone that heard of the news had been stunned into silence from it as they processed the information with great shock. Saint rulers were extremely rare individuals to see on the continent. In the eyes of the general populace, people like those stood at the very top of the power structure. They were the ones who grasped the profound mysteries of the world and arrived at the realm where only the supernaturals could go to. A single lift of their hand was capable of destroying the earth around them, and even gods wouldn't be unharmed. So when a person of this legendary status had been killed by the punishment of Mercenary City, everyone had been thoroughly shocked once more by the severity of the punishment. Once again, everyone had acknowledged the power of Mercenary City if they could so easily kill a saint ruler. Following the spread of the fact that a saint ruler had died, news that Jian Shen had been left relatively unharmed had accompanied it as well. Everyone was especially curious to know just how Jian Shen had been able to escape punishment even though he had been the one to instigate the fight and destroy several establishments. No one knew the answer why. In a small kingdom roughly 50,000 kilometers away, a single person with a dowdy build was drinking a jar of wine and a platter of food by himself in a single inn. As he ate, he listened to the random gossip of the people around him with great interest, especially when it pertained to Mercenary City. With a voice just low enough for only himself to hear, he smiled. The barrier of Mercenary City was placed down by the unparalleled genius Mo Tianyun himself. It gained sentience a long time ago, so how could a measly saint ruler even compare to it? If a saint ruler were to fight, then even they would die without even a whimper. In all of these years, I wondered just how many saint rulers have or will lose their lives to it. What do you guys think of this Jian Shen? Why do you think he was the only one to escape the punishment even though he started the fight? Do you think it's because he's the king of mercenaries, or that he has some sort of connections with the higher-ups of the city? I'd have to say it's one of those reasons. I've heard that in the end, Jian Shen was brought away by several of the great ones without a fuss. I'd have to say that the most likely answer is that he has some connections with the power holders of HTE City. There was a pure white tiger on his shoulder too. That tiger had wings on it. That can't be your ordinary beast cub. Yeah, can't be. Jian Shen is a heaven saint master. How could any magical beast cub he carry with him be of ordinary breed? That cub has to be a class 5 magical beast at the very least. Many people within the inn had been talking about the death of the saint ruler, but just as many people were talking passionately about Jian Shen himself. A snow-white tiger with wings on its back. Could that be? The man who had been sitting by himself suddenly had a sharp gleam of light enter his eyes as he thought to himself. It's very possible. But whether or not it's it or not, I have to make sure myself. But Mercenary City, at the mention of Mercenary City, the man had hesitated as fear shone in his eyes. But then with a final clench of his teeth in determination, the burly-looking man tossed a purple coin on the table and left the inn. In Mercenary City, Jian Shen sat on top of a bed with the azure and violet sword spirits trying to purge the remaining parts of the imprint of death on him. Although Patriarch Shi had died, the imprint of death was still there, meaning the rest of the Shi family could still chase after him. Something like that was not a favorable thing for Jian Shen. Ever since the tiger cub had been given such a tremendous sum of heavenly resources, its growth rate was no longer a concern of vexation for Jian Shen. The cub could now eat without him being stingy, and Jian Shen had already fed it several dozen thousand-year-old heavenly resources for it before it fell back asleep on his bed to absorb the power into its body. For the following period of time, Jian Shen hadn't stepped out from his room and went silent from the outside world. For an entire month, he had been secluded in his room before the azure and violet sword spirits had finally managed to remove the imprint of death from him without a single bit of it remaining. As soon as the imprint of death was gone from him, Jian Shen had been able to let out a sigh in relief. With the imprint of death on him, Jian Shen had felt as if there was always someone constantly watching him from the dark. Up until now, he had not felt as free as before and could not relax. Seeing that only a month had passed by, Jian Shen let out a small victorious smile as he spoke. I've finally gotten rid of the imprint of death. Who would have known that this small interlude would have taken 3 months? Any longer and 2 years would go by before little Fatty and I met again. I can't put it off anymore and head out right away. Big brother, you're finally awake. Little Spirit's voice rang through the room before her body materialized in front of Jian Chen's sight. Little Spirit, thank you for your help these past few days. But your big brother has stayed here long enough. I have important matters to do and so I must leave right away. Jian Chen smiled. In the span of these few days, Jian Chen had begun to see Little Spirit as a little sister, so now that they had to split ways, he was feeling unwell because of it, but there was no other option. The smile that had been on Little Spirit's face slowly started to fade away when she heard Jian Chen. On her face now was a very lonely expression as she spoke softly, "Big brother, are you leaving?" Jian Chen had nearly hesitated to answer her after hearing the loneliness in her voice. "Little Spirit, your big brother has plenty of things that must be done, so I must leave the city. But don't worry, your big brother will come see you when there is time." "But big brother, Little Spirit doesn't want you to leave. Could you stay here? Please?" Little Spirit has lost master for a long time now. Little Spirit doesn't wish to lose big brother too. She pleaded as if she was about to cry. Giving a faint smile, he spoke, "Little Spirit, you won't lose your big brother. Your big brother is only going to be leaving for a short while. I'll be back soon to see you. I guarantee that within 3 years, I'll be here to see you, okay?" Her mood rose up slightly after that, but Little Spirit still looked at him with reluctance. "Big brother, you have to keep your word, okay? Don't lie to Little Spirit. You'll come see Little Spirit in 3 years or Little Spirit will be lonely." Jian Chen nodded his head to guarantee her, "Little Spirit, rest assured. Within 3 years, your big brother will come back to see you." With his promise, Little Spirit had finally a sweet smile on her face. But then when she thought of something, her eyebrows furrowed together. "But big brother, there's still that one baddie that ran away. What will big brother do if he comes after you outside of Mercenary City?" Narrowing his eyes to think, Jian Chen grew silent. After a while, he spoke, "The continent is a large one and has people everywhere. With the imprint of death gone, finding me won't be an easy task by any means for him. I'd say that he will be hard-pressed to find me. But in the case that he does, what will you do? Big brother, you aren't strong enough to beat that baddie. Little Spirit can see that. In the case that you meet him, that baddie will definitely be stronger than you. You won't even have the chance to escape." Little Spirit spoke with worry. It's sad that Little Spirit can't leave Mercenary City. Master also forbidden Little Spirit in interfering with the outside world as well. It's only when someone break the rules that Little Spirit can harm them. Otherwise, Little Spirit would go with Big Brother and beat that baddie that tried to bully you. She spoke sadly. But then in the next second, she brightened up. "Oh. Big Brother, there's a way. Let Little Spirit increase your strength. If Big Brother's strength is stronger than that baddie, then Big Brother won't have to worry anymore." A surprised light entered Jian Chen's eyes at that as he asked, "Little Spirit, don't tell me you have a way to increase my power?" "Of course. Big brother, Little Spirit is amazing. Little Spirit can evolve the mysteries of the world into something Big Brother can understand. This way, Big Brother will reach the same realm of strength as that baddie." Little Spirit spoke with great pride. Jian Chen had shaken his head with disappointment. However, Little Spirit, to understand the profound mysteries of the world requires the strength of a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Only those people have a grasp on the vital energy of the world and by extension contact with the profound mysteries of the world. It isn't easy to understand those mysteries, and even with your help, your Big Brother would still require such a long time to become a saint ruler, I'm sure. "Oh. Then what do we do?" Little Spirit furrowed her eyebrows in frustration. "If there was a tremendous amount of energy such as from a ruler armament, then I could use it to refine it into chaotic force. Even if I don't become a saint ruler, I will at least be able to fight against a saint ruler." Jian Chen muttered as he thought about the chaotic force. "Energy? Big Brother, you only need energy to become even stronger?" Little Spirit's eyes lit up as she looked at Jian Chen. "Correct." Jian Chen nodded. Growing excited, Little Spirit clapped her hands. Hee, big brother, you should have said that earlier. Little Spirit can help you. Big brother, let me take you somewhere. As soon as she spoke, Jianchen suddenly felt the space around his body start to ripple and fluctuate wildly. The world around him became an instant blur before he was plunged into darkness. In this one moment, his entire world was deathly quiet. Jianchen couldn't hear a single thing, and even the noises from the streets outside his room had disappeared without a trace. In this one moment, he had left the noisy mercenary city and arrived in a never-before-seen place. Big brother, we're here. This is the place. Little Spirit's voice made itself known in Jianchen's ear. But Jianchen could see nothing. Even if he were to reach out with his hand, he wouldn't even be able to see his fingers. Closing his eyes, Jianchen spread out his presence in order to try and sense out the place. But what happened next had amazed him. There was some sort of powerful barrier that had blocked him from sensing anything. Little Spirit, what is this place? Jianchen asked curiously. Big brother, this is the space beneath Mercenary City and also Little Spirit's home. This was also where Little Spirit was born. Big brother, don't underestimate this place. It may be dark, but it has plenty of energy here from all of the years Little Spirit spent gathering here. Chapter 618, Minor Achievement with the Chaotic Body, 3. Surveying the area around him, Jianchen asked in confusion, Little Spirit, is there really a large amount of energy here? Why can I not sense a single thing? That's because Big Brother is surrounded by Little Spirit's barrier. Of course Big Brother won't be able to sense the outside. Big brother, prepare yourself, Little Spirit is about to drop the barrier. She giggled. When Little Spirit dropped the barrier, Jianchen was immediately hit with an influx of energy from the surrounding area onto his body. The energy had been so powerful and massive that he felt as if an entire mountain had been dropped on top of his body and rendered him immobile. Even his fingers were hardly capable of moving. Stunned by the tremendous amount of energy that was trapping his entire body, Jianchen felt as if he was a small boat stuck out in the ocean. He was as insignificant as a speck of sand on the beach. Big brother, this place should have plenty of energy. It's everything Little Spirit accumulated over the years. Hurry up and absorb it. Big brother will become stronger that way and won't have to worry about the baddie. Little Spirit spoke into his ear. Letting out a breath of air, Jianchen slowly calmed himself down and connected with the sword spirits. Wow, master, there's plenty of energy in this place. It's very strong, too far stronger than the energy in a ruler armament. That's good then. Since this place has a lot of energy, master, you should borrow this energy and reach the realm of minor achievement with the chaotic body. You'll be able to use chaotic force that way. Qingsua and Ziying had been awakened by the external sensations they felt and let out gasps in amazement and joy at the revelation. Upon hearing that absorbing the energy in this place would be enough to get him to the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body, Jianchen had been filled with joy. And when he heard that he'd be able to use chaotic force at that point, he had been ecstatic. Ziying, Qingsua, let's begin right away then. Let's refine this into chaotic force. Jianchen ordered right away. He really wanted to see just how strong this minor achievement realm was. Yes, master. The two spoke right away before flying out of Jianchen's body. As soon as they exited his body, a pair of azure and violet light filled the previously pitch-dark area with their glow. With the azure and violet glow above his head, they quickly materialized into a semi-transparent body just like Little Spirit. But their physical manifestations were of a pair of 20-something young male and female that looked to be like lovers. Ah. Strange, who are you two? Did you just come out from Big Brother's body? Why didn't Little Spirit sense you? Little Spirit suddenly spoke out in confusion. Turning to Jianchen, she asked, Big Brother, who are those two? They look kinda similar to Little Spirit. Little Spirit, they are very good friends of mine. He replied. Oh, so they're Big Brother's friends. But if they're friends of Big Brother, then they're friends of Little Spirit. Oh yeah. How happy this is. Little Spirit has even more friends. And they're like me as well. Little Spirit let out a happy cry from the excitement of meeting two new friends. Ziying and Qingsua both looked at Little Spirit for a brief moment before Ziying stated, "A strong soul." Qingsua's eyes were lit up bright as she spoke. This soul is a post-celestial being that has lived for a long time. But because of the inability to become a pre-celestial, her sentience was unable to mature and was stuck as a 2-3-year-old child. What a shame. Whatever the case, it isn't a good topic for now. Qingsua, let us not waste any time and hurry up to refine the chaotic force. The sooner we do so, the sooner Master can form the chaotic body. Ziying spoke. Yes. Then let us begin. Qingsua spoke. Holding Ziying's hand, the two of them began to synchronize their absorption of the energy. All of a sudden, the energy around them began to get sucked up into them at an accelerated rate. It was as if a whale was beginning to take in a tremendous amount of water. As the energy gathered around them, it contracted at an alarming rate in between their hands before slowly forming the chaotic force. The rate of refinement into chaotic force was extremely fast and took only a short few moments before the first strand of it was formed in Jian Chen's body. Jian Chen hadn't been idle himself. Controlling the first strand of chaotic force, he had it circle around his body and used it to temper his entire body. As the strand of chaotic force slowly traveled around his body, the tremendous amount of energy slowly infused itself with Jian Chen's body. His originally strong body was slowly being refined more and more, and whether it was his blood, muscles or meridians, they were all being strengthened at a tremendous rate. By the third rotation, the chaotic force had completely lost all form of energy and disappeared from existence. And with the energy being infused with Jian Chen's body, Jian Chen himself could feel his own body grow drastically in power. Afterwards, Qingsua and Ziying focused on refining more and more strands of chaotic force to put into Jian Chen's body. With plenty of them to use, Jian Chen's body had exploded exponentially in might from the strengthening and shot quickly towards the realm of minor achievement. In the darkness, time seemed to have gone into a standstill. There was practically no sensation of time even flowing, and no one inside this space seemed to be aware of anything. But then, a sudden crackling sound suddenly broke the silence in this darkness. The skin of Jian Chen's body began to crack in several areas like the webs of a spider, and in a few short seconds, not a single part of Jian Chen's skin was left untouched by these cracks. It had been this grotesque sight that made Jian Chen look as if he was a vase that was threatening to crack and fall to pieces. Even his handsome faces had been ravaged by the countless cracks. He looked like a monster, a utterly terrifying monster. And in the next moment, the fingernail-sized pieces of skin began to flake away from his body one by one. As each piece flaked away, a flawless jade-like skin could be seen replacing the pieces. His new layer of skin was as white as sheepskin, and it was extremely supple but flexible with the touch. In short, his skin was as flawless as the skin of a newborn and would be the target of envy by any women. Whilst Jian Chen's outer skin was undergoing a process of metamorphism, his muscles were also being elevated to new heights. Like the cicada shedding its carapace, Jian Chen was undergoing a new level of evolution. Within this short amount of time, Jian Chen's body had underwent a terrifying level of growth. At the same time, Jian Chen could feel the chaotic force in his body become more smooth to the sensation and usage. He no longer felt the same pain from before when he used it. And at last, he no longer felt the difference in using the chaotic force than when he used the Saint Force. Both could be wielded by him at ease as if it were breathing. He had been unsure of how much time had passed, but over 100 strands of chaotic force had been used for the sake of Jian Chen's evolution. By now, the source of endless energy that was being fed into the sword spirits to be refined into chaotic force had been stopped, as there was no longer any need for it. Shortly afterwards, the voices of Qingsua could be heard. "Master. You've done it. You've finally reached the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body. You can now use the chaotic force." Startled awake, Jian Chen retreated from his meditative state of mind and began to pay more attention to the new changes of his body. His face had been unable to hide his joy. In fact, although he didn't know just how strong he became on a numerical level, he was absolutely sure that the strength of his body had surpassed what a Heaven Saint Master would be able to scratch. All that was left to see was how it would do against a saint ruler. Ziying, Qingsua, you too are more understanding of the chaotic force than I am. If I were to meet a saint ruler, would I stand a chance against them? Jian Chen asked. Master, Ziying and Qingsua pay very little attention to the outer world, so we are not as knowledgeable about the strengths of a saint ruler. But with Master's current power, if Master were to fight that saint ruler who ran away some time ago, then even if Master was unable to beat him, Master would be invincible at the very least. Ziying spoke. Is that right? Jian Chen smiled joyfully. The minor achievement with chaotic force was truly something that would allow him to fight with a saint ruler. Master, the chaotic body is far from being enough. The chaotic body must coordinate with the chaotic force in order to show off its best strengths. From now on, Master must absorb the chaotic force in your body and condense it into your Naiden. Ziying spoke. Big brother, what is this chaotic body? And what's chaotic force? Big brother, little spirit can see that your body has grown even stronger now. Is that this chaotic body? Little spirit asked him curiously after listening to Ziying. Correct. Your big brother's body is the chaotic body made from chaotic force itself. It is a very strong type of power. Little spirit, your big brother still wants to borrow the energy in this place. It'll make my power even stronger to be enough to deal with that baddie. Jian Chen said. Go ahead. Big brother can absorb as much energy in this place as big brother wants. As long as big brother will be safe from that baddie, then take as much as you want. Little spirit agreed enthusiastically. Afterwards, Ziying and Qingsua held hands once more to absorb even more energy in the area to refine it into chaotic force. And Jian Chen himself had closed his eyes to focus on cultivating. Silently drawing the chaotic force around his body, he converted it into power for him to use before allowing it to gather in his dantian without it strengthening his body. Following the endless flow of chaotic force to enter his body from the outside, Jian Chen watched more and more chaotic force assemble within his body and gather in his dantian to form a small soybean-sized gray sphere. With this gray sphere being formed, Ziying and Qingsua ceased in their actions and held out their hands. The energy that had been flowing into them had halted before flying into Jian Chen's body even faster than before. It was as if his body was an endless pit that accepted as much energy as possible, like a whale taking in water. If things were like before, Jian Chen wouldn't have done things as such. This powerful energy would have torn his body apart But because he had already achieved a level of minor achievement with his chaotic body, he could easily withstand this without a problem or any feeling of pain. Master, your chaotic body has formed and your Naiden has formed as well. There is no need for us to help you convert any more chaotic force anymore. As long as there is energy from the outside world flowing into your body, your Naiden will convert it into chaotic force itself. Master, quickly convert this energy into your Naiden. Ziying and Qingsua will help you absorb it. Ziying spoke inside of Jian Chen's mind. At a thought, the soybean-sized Naiden within Jian Chen's body began to rotate faster and faster as the energy that was flowing into his body was being converted into chaotic force. Chapter 619, Leaving for Longevity Valley. As the boundless amount of energy flowed into Jian Chen's body for him to refine into chaotic force, the amount of chaotic force in his body grew bigger and bigger. As a result, the chaotic core he had formed in his dantian had slowly increased in size as well, from a small soybean to a small fingernail size. Following the creation of the chaotic core, Jian Chen felt his body be filled with an inexhaustible amount of energy. With a thought, he could easily control the chaotic force in his dantian to use as he pleased. He was no longer as powerless as he was before when he lost his saint force. Oh! Big brother, you're amazing. You're absorbing energy so fast. Even faster than little spirit. And even with so much energy, big brother doesn't feel ill at all, super amazing. Little spirit spoke as she observed how Jian Chen was doing with a look of surprise. It had been unknown just how much time had transpired, but the core that was growing within Jian Chen's body had only grown bigger and bigger. It was by now already the size of his thumb and was still accumulating energy to a degree where Jian Chen had previously thought to be impossible. Right now, Jian Chen didn't even know just how much energy he had absorbed and processed. By now, the previously boundless amount of energy in Mercenary City had started to thin out to a considerable degree. Oh! Big brother, you've already absorbed 50,000 years worth of energy little spirit accumulated. When will you be done? Soon enough, all the energy little spirit accumulated will be gone. Seeing the energy lessen, little spirit couldn't help but speak with a slightly pained look. But Jian Chen had been completely entranced in his meditative mind state and had not heard little spirit. He knew that since little spirit was protecting this place, there would be no dangers here at all, so he could focus completely on refining the energy. As thus, his guard was at its lowest point. With the assistance of the sword spirits, a dreadful amount of energy was being absorbed at a constant fast rate. An unknown amount of time had gone on before the core in his dantian had grown to the size of an egg now. And the energy underneath Mercenary City was fewer than before. As Jian Chen was basking in this completely euphoric feeling of his power being increased, the flow of energy into his body was suddenly stopped. Startled by this change in events, Jian Chen awoke from his meditative state. As soon as he opened his eyes, Jian Chen could see the still transparent figure of little spirit. But on her face was a look of misery as she wailed. Little spirit, what happened? He asked in confusion. Big brother, you can't absorb any more energy. You've already absorbed almost all of the energy little spirit saved up for 100,000 years. If this goes on, then the seal won't hold any more. Little spirited spoke pleadingly. Seal? What seal? Jian Chen started. He had been shocked as he didn't think that to reach the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body, he would have absorbed 100,000 years worth of energy that little spirit stored up. If not for her, it would have taken an extremely long amount of time to reach the minor achievement realm by himself. That was because a single strand of chaotic force was refined from a sea of vital energy of the world. It was tantamount to the strength of a single saint ruler. Oops. Little spirit clasped her mouth shut with both hands before shaking her head repeatedly. What seal? Big brother, you heard wrong. Little spirit, your big brother has exceptional hearing. You just said that if too much energy was absorbed, then the seal wouldn't be able to hold any more. Little spirit, what seal is this? Jian Chen gave a smile to her, but in his mind, he was extremely skeptical. Just how many secrets did Mercenary City have? Was there always a seal? What did this seal do? It's nothing. Big brother, you misheard. Little spirit didn't say anything. Little spirit waved her hands while she tried to persuade him frantically. Seeing little spirit act like this, Jian Chen couldn't find it in himself to ask any more. Although he really wanted to know just what this seal did, seeing little spirit guard this secret so much caused him to think that he would be causing trouble for her if he persisted to ask. It was all because of little spirit's contributions that he was able to reach the minor achievement realm so quickly. As thus, he did not wish to do anything that would cause her difficulties. Alright, little spirit. Your big brother heard wrongly just now. I don't know what this seal you're talking about is. Jian Chen smiled warmly. But still, he had looked around the place curiously. He had wanted to see something at the very least, but it was still pitch dark. Even with the assistance of the glow from the azure and violet sword spirits, he was hardly able to see a short distance away. Everything was a blurry mess and nothing could be seen. Beaming with joy, little spirit spoke afterwards. Big brother, little spirit can see that you've grown extremely strong now. You should be able to handle that battle now. Let little spirit take you out of here then. As she spoke, a barrier had already enveloped Jian Chen's body and carried him back to his original room in the inn. As soon as Jian Chen reappeared in the room, the tiger cub had jumped onto his shoulder in delight. Using its short paws, the cub wrapped itself around his neck and let out a slow mournful purr. Petting the cub on its head and speaking several comforting words to it, Jian Chen spoke to the seemingly empty room. Little spirit, just how long was I underneath the city for? Just about 15 days, big brother. Little spirit spoke as she materialized in front of him. Another month has gone by without my knowing. I didn't even feel 2 hours go by even. Jian Chen muttered in shock. But even with that said, his eyes suddenly widened in shock as he looked down at his entirely naked body. His clothes had long since been ruined from the tremendous amount of energy that had flowed past it. Quickly putting on a new set of clothes, Jian Chen then inspected his body to see just how big of a difference the chaotic force had made. After reaching the minor achievement realm, Jian Chen didn't feel any change in his physique. But his stature had clearly grown even more firm than before. The biggest change was the fact that his body contained even more power than before. This power was so dreadfully big that he felt as if a single punch could destroy a mountain. Clenching his fist tightly, Jian Chen let a careless thrust forward with it. As the fist passed through the air, the space around it distorted slightly. The power in this one fist was enough to cause more stress on the space than what it could even handle. It was something that a Heaven Saint Master could only show after using a Heaven-tier battle skill, but he was able to replicate it with a single punch. Wow! Big Brother's amazing. If Big Brother meets that baddie again, then there won't be any more need for fear. Little Spirit spoke up excitedly. Master, the strength of the chaotic body is far stronger than what you can believe. You've reached the realm of minor achievement, so the chaotic force is now distributed evenly through your body. Even if a saint ruler were to strike you, the amount of damage shouldn't be all that bad. Ziying spoke into his mind. At Ziying's words, Jian Chen had felt extremely elated. Saint ruler of the Jetta clan. I, Jian Chen, swear to find you. And the saint ruler of the sect of Dragon and Tiger, wash your neck and wait for me. Jian Chen smiled coldly. Now that he was at the realm of minor achievement, he had finally reached a level where fighting a saint ruler was possible. There was no longer any need to fear a saint ruler. Afterwards, Jian Chen and Little Spirit said their farewells before Jian Chen brought the tiger cub with him out the room. Sire Jian Chen. Jian Chen, my friend. As soon as Jian Chen went downstairs, a multitude of people came forward to greet him. Each one of them wished to pull Jian Chen into their group so that a good relationship could be formed between them. Because of his actions in Mercenary City, practically every family and household had thought that Jian Chen had the support of a very powerful patron. Combined with his talents, he was someone that people would hold no expense to get to know. A connection with him would serve beautifully for them. After wasting some time dealing with the crowd, Jian Chen gave a small smile and a few words before leaving with Hu Xiaotian away from the inn. Soon enough, Jian Chen had left the city and had just overstepped the boundary of the barrier. Big brother, you can't lie to Little Spirit. You have to come back within 3 years to see Little Spirit, or else Little Spirit will get angry. Little Spirit floated a meter high into the air as she sent off Jian Chen with a look of sadness. She was very unwilling to part with Jian Chen. Little Spirit. Be at ease, as long as nothing major happens, your big brother will come back to see you. Jian Chen guaranteed again for the 3rd time before stepping away into a blur. With his speed, he shot off towards the direction of Cross Mountains in no time at all. The illusionary step was a heaven-tier battle skill that Jian Chen had once used. It held no offensive power and only served to make one even faster than before. With that, Jian Chen had been able to escape the pursuit of a Heaven Saint Master even as an Earth Saint Master. But after the loss of his Saint Force, he had been unable to use the illusionary step. Though, With the chaotic force now being used instead of saint force, he could use the illusionary step once again. Only prairies were around Mercenary City, but Jian Chen could be seen blurring past the prairies at tremendous speeds. Perhaps it was because of his illusionary step, but his speed now was far faster than what the power of flight could give him. Chapter 620, Meeting the Heian clan again. This illusionary flash is quite extraordinary. I've understood only a portion of it, and yet I am still this fast. It's far faster than flying. Jian Chen remarked in surprise about the illusionary flash. And with the chaotic force feeding into the illusionary flash, he was going extremely fast for an extremely small amount of energy. As he sped through the plains and fields, he had been able to bask in the sensation of running fast. It had been a very long time since he had last felt it, and ever since he became a Heaven Saint Master, he had been flying everywhere instead. There hadn't been a need for him to use his legs to run. It was a decently sized distance from Mercenary City to cross mountains at well over 500,000 kilometers. A distance like that had meant that it would take Jian Chen nearly 4 days' worth to travel with the illusionary flash before he finally reached the mountains. But even after the 4th day of continuous traveling, Jian Chen did not feel tired at all. The topography of the cross mountains was complex and the paths were precipitous, so when Jian Chen arrived, he didn't bother with the illusionary flash and continued to fly for the rest of the way to Longevity Valley. After 4 hours, Jian Chen had finally arrived back at Longevity Valley. Following the twisting roads to the valley, Jian Chen was able to then enter the hidden village. As soon the fragrant smell of the soil hit his nose, Jian Chen felt as if he had stepped into a hidden paradise. There was not the bloody smell of the outside dog-eat-dog world to be found here, and Jian Chen felt himself at an impeccable level of tranquility. After spending so long in the violent continent, Jian Chen didn't know if there was ever a time he had been as calm as he was now. It was like there was some sort of hidden power in this land that negated the evil influences of the heart. It was high noon by the time he arrived at Longevity Valley. Plenty of villagers could be seen walking about, and when Jian Chen entered the village, these villagers had noticed him right away. "Iya. Look there, isn't that there the Jian Chen fellow? Brother Jian Chen has returned." Many of the villagers spoke out excitedly. Some of them had thrown down their farming tools in excitement to go running towards Jian Chen. In a flash, 3 of the more younger villagers had surrounded him and began to ask all sorts of questions about the outside world. "Brother Jian Chen, how was the outside world? Was it fun? Big brother Jian Chen, how far away was the outside world to our valley? When can you bring us there to play? Big brother Jian Chen, I heard that the outside world is dangerous. Is it true? Did you face danger out there?" These 3 youths had blabbered on and on with questions for Jian Chen to answer, but each question had been related to the outside world. They were villagers that had never stepped out from Longevity Valley and into the outside world. Because of that, they had never personally seen the outside world for themselves and was extremely curious as a result. "Jian Chen." A dignified voice spoke out as Xiaomi came forward towards him. He had been shirtless and wore only short pants down below. "Uncle Xiaomi." Jian Chen spoke out happily to him. He was the uncle of Little Fatty and was a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. For him, there was only a small step before he would become a saint ruler. Nodding his head, Xiaomi looked at Jian Chen carefully. "Jian Chen," he smiled. "You must have come back for Little Fatty. That promise you made with him has passed several months already." Jian Chen smiled apologetically. "Uncle Xiaomi, please accept my sincerest apologies. I had planned to return earlier, but I had been forced to delay my visit because of some unforeseen events." Xiaomi gave a loud laugh as he answered, "No worries, I know what the outside world is like. Whenever there is trouble that can't be avoided, it is only natural to be held up by it. But Jian Chen, if you're here for Little Fatty, your arrival is a little untimely." "Why is that? Has Little Fatty not yet become an Earth Saint Master?" Jian Chen asked. That's not it. Xiaomi shook his head. Little Fatty has exceptional talent, it's far stronger than mine or my father's in fact. There had been nothing wrong with his development. He had only required a half year to become an Earth Saint Master, but because my father was not willing to let him go with you into the Tianyuan continent like this, he took Little Fatty with him to teach and give a few things to him. This way, when he goes to the outside world, he'll be able to protect himself. Uncle Xiaomi, when will Little Fatty return then? Jian Chen asked. It should be any time by now. I'd reckon 3 months. He replied. 3 months, that's enough time for me to handle a few things. Jian Chen thought to himself. Afterwards, Jian Chen made talk with Xiaomi for a while longer before handing several things to each of the villagers. Staying for a day, Jian Chen then left on the 2nd with plans to return within 3 months to meet with Little Fatty. With Jian Chen back on the continent, he brought the sleeping tiger cub with him to a smaller kingdom's first-class city to find a way to find out where the Jita clan was. Now that he was no longer afraid of any saint ruler, the Jita clan no longer imposed a problem to him. He had the strength and he had the blood debt. When it came to an enemy like this, Jian Chen would not forgive them easily. My apologies, sire. The family you are inquiring about is a complete mystery to us. We are only responsible for information within a 50,000 kilometers perimeter. Perhaps this family you are looking for is beyond our area. A 70-year-old man spoke to Jian Chen within an information broker store. Sighing, Jian Chen held out a purple coin and gave it to him. Leaving the room, Jian Chen thought about the Jita clan. It had been unfortunate that he felt helpless in trying to find where the Jita clan was. If only I had known early to ask about them in Mercenary City. Those men would have definitely known where the Jita clan was. Jian Chen sighed to himself. Halt. Stay where you are. Hand over that beast cub if you know what's good for you. Or else you'll be carrying food. At that moment, a large ruckus could be heard at the end of a street. A single disheveled white-robed man could be seen running in between the crowd. His face was pale, and his body was clearly injured from how he was half-hobbling as he ran. Furthermore, the entire top half of his body was drenched with blood as he carried a small magical beast. Right behind him, 3 middle-aged men were running at him with their saint weapons in hand. Each one of these 4 men were Earth Saint Masters, but their pursuit had been long enough for them to all be gasping for breath. With their current speed, it had not been long until the young man brushed up against Jian Chen. Just then, one of the 3 pursuers suddenly stamped hard onto the ground to kick off into the air. His entire body suddenly lit up with an azure light as he sped towards the youth and landed a kick onto his back. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the young man flew forward into the air before tumbling back down to the ground 20 meters away. The 3 men had immediately came forward to surround him with one of the 3 glaring evilly at him. Smelly brat, let's see you try to get away now. We only wanted you to hand over that cub. There wasn't a need for you to be harmed at all. But since you've refused our kindness, we'll force you to hand it over then. Since you've killed 2 of our own, we'll make sure you won't get away. Don't even let him say anything and just kill him. This is for He Xiong and He Qing. The other man snarled before hoisting his sword up. Without mercy, he swung the blade down onto the youth's head. Widening his eyes wide, the youth watched the blade come down onto his head unwillingly. He had sadly been far too injured to move. Considering all the energy he spent fighting and running away already, he was completely out. Not a single iota of energy could be used, so he could only close his eyes and await death. Just as the blade was about to cut into his throat, a sudden burst of energy slammed against the sword and knocked it away from his body just narrowly. At this sudden development, the 3 men had looked startled. Each one looked to where the blast had originated from before one of them cried out, "Which fucker is the one that's getting in our business? To interfere with the Heian clan is a suicidal act, come on out." Everyone watching had been brought to a frenzy as they saw the young man about to be executed. But when they heard that it was the Heian clan, everyone had immediately grown quiet. Jian slowly walked out from the group and smiled at the three men. "So you're men from the Heian clan. I didn't expect to come across you today. I suppose that meeting my enemies on this narrow road was inevitable." In Jian mind, he thought back to when he had to escape from the clan with the tiger cub back in Thousand Poison Valley. That clan had been the Heian clan with a Heaven Saint Master. The three men glared angrily at Jian one by one. The last one then spoke out, "Brat, who are you? Are you the one that stopped us just then?" "Who I am isn't important." "But yes, that was I." Jian laughed. "You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.